Welcome on in, trainers, the Championship Sunday. I'll be your host today. Tyson Hughes joined here by Hayden McTavish, ready to kick off the Victory Road side game stream. And I'm super excited. Well, I guess it's not side games anymore, right? We're in Championship Sunday. What am I talking about? We're going to feature three great sets today between all of our different age groups, that being the seniors, juniors, and masters age divisions. So tons of talent as we round out this weekend of amazing games of Pokemon.
Yeah, I'm so delighted and excited to be able to cast this with you, Tyson. Not just one, not just two, but all three of those finals. It's going to be really exciting to provide some extra insight into all of these players and all of the strategy that goes on in preparing for these really, really high stakes pinnacle of Pokemon matches.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really is the pinnacle, right? That is the best part. I think about these weekends, very similarly to internationals as well at the World Championships, right? We have all of our finalists play on this Sunday, and it's this grand event. And as you'll see in a little bit as well, it's on in an arena, which is fascinating to me. And it really proves how far we've come with VG in general. And if you've been watching the stream before, even on Unite and Pokemon Go, as well as the TCG, they've had like different things on the stage and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see what they do for VG and how they're really going to elevate that experience. But even more than that, we're going to get to highlight here who even is on the top of the leaderboards here and our finalists. And this is going to be our juniors first and foremost. So Luke Whitler and Sosuke Aranori, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, are going to be your finalists here playing first for the junior division.
And all of them with just extraordinary 2-0 records in every single match since top 8. Both of these players going in having won convincingly all of their other high-stakes matches. I think both Luke and Sosuke probably have to be feeling really strong about their teams going into this finals. Really, especially at a high level of play, like in the top cut of World Championships, being able to get 2-0 victories is pretty strong. And so I think both of them have a lot of reason to be confident in themselves going into this really high-stakes match in an arena.
And both these players are, I'm sure, super pumped to be getting a World Championship title added to their belts, both with very creative teams as well, which we'll get to in a little bit. I'm very excited to cover these because we've already seen a lot of, the Masters gameplay, as that is the main feature of the stream, but getting to witness the Championship Sunday, especially at Internats or at Worlds in general, getting to see what the seniors and juniors cooked up all weekend and really what dominate that level of field is always exciting to see, because the way they approach the game honestly is totally different sometimes than maybe some Masters level player. Those younger minds are really innovative, and they have a totally different take on maybe some of how the meta works or how certain lines are supposed to go in when approaching teams.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the really interesting and wonderful parts of Pokemon specifically as a series, that there is this age division for all of the 11 and under players. It really gives us a totally different take of what Pokemon can look like for these players who are newer to their Pokemon journeys, but still expert trainers and have all of that creativity and new insight, having only explored probably a couple of formats before this one. And so I'm really excited to get to see what their takes are on the game, designing for such a different meta game, such a different style of play than we see in the Masters division.
Yeah, and I think getting to explore that at such a young age and really lock in something and kind of get go with it. There's so much space in a young person's brain to just absorb all that Pokemon knowledge and all those calculations. To see that executed at their level as well is always really impressive. And, to get to this level, it's their own mountain they have to get to over as well. And it really is an accomplishment, no matter the age division you're at, to become a world champion. And there's only so many people that can say that, right? And to claim that title, I think, is what both players are obviously aiming for here this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Tyson, but when I was first starting in Pokemon, those first few years were just so exhilarating because there's so much ground to cover, so much to learn. And I think especially for these kids with all of that neuroplasticity, it's got to feel really exhilarating to have started Pokemon at most 11 years before getting to the finals, probably a whole lot more recently, and to still be growing so much to the point where you're at this point where you can compete for this world's title so early in your life. That's got to be really exhilarating. These players are growing so quickly, and they must be so proud of themselves for making it here.
And their families too, right? Rooting them on, being able to get to travel with your child to watch them play Pokemon and, not only make money, but make a name for themselves so early on in their careers. I can guarantee you, even not just the finalists, but everybody who has made it to top 8 here at the World Championships are definitely building a name for themselves, and we'll definitely see them more as they age up into the juniors and then into the Masters division as well. So the seniors and then into the Masters division. I'm kind of working backwards there. I always get them mixed up. But making a name for themselves, as early as possible, so that when they enter into Masters, we'll get to see more of them hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. These players have an opportunity to potentially keep growing at this exponential rate as they go into the seniors division and the masters division. And it's really exciting that we get this wonderful preview every year at the World Championships of some of the big names to watch out for in future years as they age up into other divisions. These players have some pretty good heads on their shoulders, and having learned so much in Pokemon, it'll be exciting to see what they do next, even not just at this stage, but on the next stages in the future.
Yeah, and getting to talk so much about the different levels of Pokemon always makes me so happy, especially as we wrap up our weekend here at the World Championships. It's so heartwarming to see all the culmination of their efforts and their seasons really come together onto this weekend. The cool thing about these Championship Sundays is that you can kind of collect them all together, and it's just this weekend of hard work and effort that families and coaches and players have put together for their juniors and seniors.
Yeah, this is a tone that I often feel at the World Championships. That is not just a competition, it's also a full celebration of just all of the hard work of all of these players that have made the journey all the way out to Anaheim to be able to play and compete. So it's really exciting to be able to see that. I think there's just so many interesting stories here at play and all being celebrated very well.
But let's not forget what they're playing for in the first place here. The money that we mentioned as well is a large sum, $30,000 for winning the World Championships. But, it's not the worst thing if you get second as well. You're still walking out of this arena with $20,000 in there. For third or fourth, $15,000, then $10,000, and then $5,000. So a decent, amount of money to walk home from or walk home with.
Yeah, both of these juniors division players are going to be able to put on their college applications that a good chunk of their college scholarships might be paid for from having done an amazing job at a Pokemon tournament whack when they were very young. That's such a wonderful thing for them to be able to pat themselves on the back for pretty much the rest of their lives. That's such a monumental accomplishment.
I think more than that, especially if I'm a child, I don't really grasp the concept of $30,000. I'm more excited about the big Pikachu trophy and the card that says #1 trainer on it. That's what I'd be excited for personally if I was at that age range. But I mean, who knows? Maybe we have some, financially responsible children nowadays playing the VG championships. But I'm super excited to, again, cover these games and get to cast them with you. We are going to jump into the team preview soon, as soon as they're done setting up the stage. But I guess a couple of the teams here, I'm taking a preview at them. They're very exciting. They're definitely not what's going on in the Masters division, but they're still, there's some standard bits to it. But not to give any spoilers, there's a little, tech or two in there that you might be surprised by.
Yeah, I think we're really in for quite an exciting match here. It's really fun, especially to see the team building decisions that go into the juniors division. They just look so different from that masters division. And some things really do trickle down from other age divisions, and other things are just totally different because you want to keep things sort of more straightforward when you can for the younger players so that they have cleaner game plans into things. So yeah, very excited to talk about those once we're ready to put those team sheets up. I suppose in the meantime, I should mention maybe the other factor at play here. These juniors division players have had 24 hours to prepare for this one match. Whether or not they're grasping the whole financial responsibility here, it's an incredibly high stakes match. There's so much prestige on the line, so much money on the line. I think it's really interesting to think about the mental games that these players have to have going in at such a young age to play such an important high stakes match where there really are no guarantees. Anyone could win pretty much any game in Pokemon.
And I think exactly like you said as well, having those simplified game plans, or not simplified, but simpler game plans that those younger players maybe have an easy grasp on. That's why I feel like you see so many more of those tech moves or maybe more gimmicky strategies that you might consider in the Masters division, is because they usually are very straightforward for the younger players. Being able to execute those game plans is a lot easier. Something like Hard Trick'em, for example, where, a Masters team might cover a lot more of those bases. A junior or seniors team might be very simplified in that game plan and might have, a small move on there that might throw off a normal line into you that gives them that extra edge, and they can click in that case of emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting way of building. There's a lot more of an emphasis on sort of fundamental win conditions, things like speed control plus a lot of damage. And it's really interesting to see, though, knowing that these players are designing to keep the game as straightforward as possible. Sometimes, still, when you're playing another really high-level player, you're really being pushed to go to the absolute limits of your ability. And it's really exciting to see these two players who have made it this far with these really strong teams. They're going to be challenging each other to think outside the box plenty, even in this finals match. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what the plans are for these two teams, and they're going to have some more straightforward win conditions, but B, how these players are going to adjust and what tools they have to adjust if things don't go according to plan.
And I think as well, no matter what game plans you give to a junior or a senior, they don't have a guarantee that they're going to stick to them. And there's always that part of their brain that they're still the one actually playing the game. They're the one who has truly put in the work and clicked the buttons to get to this part of the stage. So it really is going to come down to them at the end of the day to, click the right buttons and make the correct choices. They've done all the work making this team, making the game plans and things like that, but it really is going to come down to them in the moment to have that mental battle, as you said, to click the right things and make the right decisions, and hopefully you take a win home.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much flexibility demanded of these players. Like, you can work as much as you want with your coach before the match, but if your opponent does something unexpected, you really have to be able to adjust. And I think with there being such high stakes here, it's going to be really interesting to see those players finding that flexibility and ability to adjust and pick the right moves when things are maybe high stakes and maybe going to be unfamiliar for them by the time that they're getting into game 2 or game 3 of these matches.
I think that's one of my favorite things about Pokemon, even across all age divisions. Being able to have that flexibility in between game plans, knowing that not every single game is going to be the same between, the damage rolls and different builds of Pokemon. There are a lot of ways that you can approach the game, and there is a certain way that usually works for that a certain kind of person, and everyone has their own different way, but whatever works for them works for them. And I mean, hopefully we get to see that here in this final stage of the World Championships. And sometimes it's apparent in team building. So when we do get into team preview, maybe we can see that as well, right? It's very simple. You can have like a Tailwind team that someone's really good with, or a Hard Trick'em team. And even at face value, those approaches really what make Pokemon unique in those different approaches that every single way, but most ways are viable to some degree. Even if it's not the best composition in the game, there's usually an array of different restricteds, as we saw yesterday from our statistics and things like that. There is a different array of strategies and Pokemon that can work for you. And it's not so solidified in maybe 6 Pokemon only that's the only thing that you can run. And if you don't, you shouldn't even bother playing the game.
Yeah, that's one of the really hardest things to learn about the game, I think, is just how much of a diversity of options there are. Like, there's not really a correct and incorrect answer in team building. Sometimes even when playing, there aren't necessarily right or wrong plays. It can depend on what you're predicting, what you think your opponent might have in the back, things like that. And I think dealing with that fundamental uncertainty in how games play out and that fundamental diversity in the set of strategies that are valid to pursue as a player is a really interesting thing for these players to sort of be just at the beginnings of their journeys in the juniors division, really grappling their brains around.
But we're going to hop right into our game here of the juniors. Luke versus Sosuke, but Sosuke here first on stage being introduced there. These trainers are so adorable. All their families there pushing them on stage, getting ready for this finals match. This is absolutely amazing. Oh, look at the little Miraidon plush and the Snivy plush as well. There's Luke there getting ready to play this game. I'm so excited to get to see what strategies they bring.
Oh, I love seeing these players bringing their favorite little plushies on stage as they go. The Snivy is so cute. And yeah, these players both getting ready to do something that's gotta feel monumentally exciting to them. They're walking onto a stadium cheered on by thousands of people, ready to play some really exciting matches with teams that they're really confident and really at an expert level with.
Yeah, expert level for sure. I mean, they are at the World Championships after all. And we can see there on the arena as well, it looks like a battlefield, like one of the schoolyards maybe in Scarlet and Violet as well. So a nice aesthetic touch there. But we do finally get a reveal of the 6 Pokemon there and a bit of their results from both these players. So definitely not their first time in the spotlight, but it looks like both of their first times maybe in finals of Worlds. So both looking to take that title home for the first time.
Yeah, that's got to be really exciting for these players, having gone from a lot of really impressive results, but definitely not a whole lot of finals at an international or a world championship level. And now really having found a team that's just working so well for them, really like that they can flow with and play with so well. It's got to be really exciting, but then definitely also like this must be a very new experience for these players. And so I think navigating those nerves alongside everything else, alongside these teams that they've trained with and worked with so hard, it's going to be important for them to be able to still adjust and handle in this very high stakes match that they might both not be so familiar with.
Yeah, and we got to highlight the 6 Pokemon that both trainers will be bringing to this match, which I'm super excited to dive into. As we hinted to before, there's a couple moves on each of the teams that might stick out to you, and when we do get to that, I'm very excited as we do pull up, yeah, Sasuke's first, and immediately off the bat we have a Choice Specs Calyrex Shadow Rider with a Pollen Puff and Shadow Ball, which is definitely new, but paired with that Indeedee female, setting up the Psychic Surge to be able to go for those devastating expanding forces, supported by a Whimsicott, Ursaluna, and Koraidon, and not to mention the Walking Wake as well, which I don't think we've seen a lot of, this season.
Yeah, the Walking Wake is a really interesting choice, giving a lot more adaptability to sort of focus on different types of damage, even in the sun being able to use those water attacks. But as you called out, really one of the pivotal things for Luke to be able to respond to here is going to be this incredible power from the Choice Specs Expanding Force Shadow Rider, supported by that Indeedee with the redirection and the Psychic Surge to set up that Psychic terrain. That's just so extraordinarily much damage potential, and it gives Sasuke such a clear, strong line that he can always fall back on, that the onus is really going to be on Luke to be able to follow up on and be able to adjust to.
Yeah, and I think with Helping Hand as well as the Choice Specs, just boosting that damage to the max, making sure that this Shadow Rider, if unresponded to, will just put in so much work against Luke's team, as we see the reveal of it here. That being the Calyrex Ice Rider and Miraidon, a duo I have been personally waiting for the entire weekend. Also paired up with a couple of, normal Pokemon like the Urshifu, the Farigiraf, and Landorus, but Luke's unique pick here being the Iron Hands, another Pokemon past and present, the Iron Hands and the Walking Wake, both Pokemon not normally seen nowadays in the Regulation I.
Yeah, things we were mentioning about the metagame being a little bit different for juniors than masters. Even though Walking Wake and Iron Hands have a couple of really strong results in masters, they haven't been as big in this tournament, but they seem to have been working really, really well for these players as options to fall back on. Iron Hands, of course, just has so much potential if it gets that Quark Drive set up. It's got so much good supportive ability. It's also one of the it's the only Pokemon with an Assault Vest, so it becomes one of very few Pokemon that can maybe potentially take some attacks from that Calyrex Shadow Rider, which might wind up coming up a little bit in this matchup. The other thing I really want to shout out about the team, though, this Choice Scarf Miraidon that we've been seeing picking up popularity in the Masters Division, Luke also has, and with that Snarl and the ability to change the terrain, it might be one of his main tools to respond to that Psychic Terrain Expanding Force Calyrex Shadow Rider option.
As well as resetting the terrain as well in favor with the electric terrain, you also have Choice Scarf, allowing you to outspeed something like the Calyrex Shadow Rider with Miraidon, which you otherwise normally wouldn't be able to do, as well as Snarl. And that's going to be very helpful because it gets around any sort of follow me from the Indeedee that could potentially come out to redirect a otherwise like parting shot from a Incineroar typically. But we are going to get into the game here. Walking Wake and Koraidon, the lead from Sosuke, and Luke off with the Calyrex Ice and the Miraidon.
So a lot of restrictors from Luke's side of the field, but Sosuke really giving us a show and showing off that walking wake, which is going to be able to get a fair bit of speed from his photosynthesis, one would assume, but that's going to be maybe not quite so helpful against this Miraidon that outspeeds it. I think there's a lot of pressure exerted right now from that Miraidon's ability to just throw off a Draco Meteor into either spot. And so I think the onus is really on Sosuke to find a way to navigate this first turn with so much pressure from that Miraidon on the other side.
And even if you Terastallize out of a weakness there from the Draco Meteor into either of these Pokemon, as you mentioned, not only do you have the possibility of getting it wrong, the Draco Meteor is still going to hurt. Being Choice Specs boosted, or excuse me, not Choice Specs boosted, but Hadron boosted from the Miraidon is going to still be doing a lot of damage, even if it is coming off a Choice Scarf Pokemon. But we do actually see a swap of the Miraidon there, maybe realizing how much pressure it exerts and saving that for later as the Farigiraf comes in instead in its place. With that Electric Seed being boosted there for Luke, as well as going to give it a defense boost against a potential Koraidon attack. Walking Wake going for Protect, maybe predicting one of those moves that Miraidon could go for into the slot, and Koraidon Protect as well, scouting out to see what the Choice Scarf Miraidon maybe wants to lock into. Calyrex, though, is going to fail Protect there on Luke's side, though. Everyone wanting to play defensive this turn.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Luke, having led with so much pressure, does have the option to do a bunch with the Miraidon, but there's so much risk there because it can take so much damage back in return. So very wisely, Sosuke just trying to figure out, okay, what's the Miraidon going to lock into? And they're saying, okay, I maybe don't want to be in this uncomfortable high-risk situation. Just pivoting to that Farigiraf, keeping the Calyrex Ice Rider safe. So we've had a turn one, but the players have just sort of repositioned and sort of set themselves up so that now the damage trades are likely to happen going into this second turn, with Luke really leaning into this option for some Trick Room here.
Yeah, and Trick Room is definitely a real possibility, but we are going to see a Terastallization from the Koraidon there on Sosuke's side into that Terra Fire to create its Flare Blitzes to such an explosive degree. With this Terastallization too, you also are posing yourself to not be weak to that Glacial Lance anymore, as well as that Draco Meteor from the Miraidon that we know is in the back. Hydra's Theme, though, going off from the Calyrex there on Luke's side into the Protect, and notably as well, able to go for it because it failed last turn. Flare Blitz, though, into this +1 defense Farigiraf is still going to do a ton of damage in the sun, and with that Terrifier boost, though with the recoil from Flare Blitz is going to have to take a little bit of chip. The Farigiraf on Luke's side sets up the Trick Room, and now this Calyrex Ice is suddenly in a really good spot.
That Electric Seed putting in so much work for the Farigiraf, like completely making the difference in whether or not the Farigiraf was able to survive that hugely powerful attack from the Koraidon. And now with Trick Room set up, Farigiraf has really done its job. It's got a few more options with like Helping Hand to be able to power up that Calyrex Ice Rider, which is pretty threatening. But the big thing is this Calyrex Ice Rider that looks like it's being set up with a Terastallization, becoming that fire type, is going to be threatening so much damage now with 4 turns of Trick Room and a powerful Glacial Lance that it can fire off.
And speaking of fire, we're going to see a Terastallization there from Luke's Calyrex Ice into the Terra Fire, and with a Helping Hand is maybe going to go for a explosive attack as the Walking Wake on Sosuke's side is going for Protect to block any potential damage. This Glacial Lance, though, even into a resisted Koraidon thanks to that Terra Fire, is still going to hurt. More importantly, though, the Terrifier here on Luke's side is going to be great at blocking any potential damage, but instead is the Farigiraf and is going to have to take a collision course and get knocked out there. So Luke is down a Pokemon and now has to find a replacement for it to come in under this Trick Room.
Sosuke saying that he really does not want those Helping Hand Glacial Lances to be firing off into any other Pokemon, but unfortunately does have to open up this position now for Luke to bring in something else. And it looks like with Luke bringing that Iron Hands you shouted out earlier, Tyson, that's going to be a whole lot of pressure, not just a Fake Out, but of a lot of really powerful attacks from a slow attacker. That's all fired up thanks to that Electric Terrain and able to do a ton of damage with the Quark Drive active.
Yeah, and with this Quark Drive active, you are able to go for a Fake Out, potentially into this Walking Wake, or double into it, considering you just went for Protect last turn. So Luke keeping up the pressure as well with this swap into the Iron Hands, as Sosuke recognizes that pressure once again and swaps in the Aditi. And this is great because not only are you resetting the Electric Terrain into your own Psychic Terrain, you're blocking a Fake Out as well. So you're removing 2 potential options there from Luke, either in the damage or in that Fake Out. But Luke going for a straight, low kick into the Walking Wake, and a high horsepower into the Koraidon slot. Was just trying to go for as much damage as possible, not really, maybe slowing himself down with a fake out. And a Hydra's theme there from Sosuke's Walking Wake is going to be able to do a decent amount of damage to that Calyrex as well.
Super effective damage there into the Calyrex Ice Rider. Really a testament to Calyrex Ice Rider's bulk that it was able to take that so well. But it's not going to be able to take another one. So Sosuke really doing a good job of weathering through the really terrifying output potential from this Calyrex Ice Rider and pivoting in that Ndidi to preserve the Koraidon for later. There's still a lot more turns of Trick Room to make it through. So we're going to have to see what Sosuke's plan is for those last 2 turns. It looks like that Protect is how Sosuke's going to start things off.
Yeah, and Protect there. Like you said, the Drain Punch, though, going into the Ndidi slot instead. Not going to be healing up as Iron Hands hasn't taken damage, but a Glacial Lance to follow up is going to get the knockout here on the Ndidi, and that's going to be a +1 there for Luke's Calyrex. But the turns of Trick Room are ticking down, and with the HP that it's at, I'm not sure that Luke really has it in the Calyrex to get another one up. With the Sunlight fading as well, as the Photosynthesis goes away on the Walking Wake, gets the reactivated there with the booster energy.
Poor Walking Wake, though, it's been sitting at boosted speed this whole time in Trick Room, so it really hasn't helped it very much without speeding things. We're going to see Sosuke send out that Koraidon once more, but its Protect is now reset because it just switched out, and so it has the option to potentially just stall out the rest of this Trick Room by going for one more Protect. And then the Sosuke is really going to be in the driver's seat with a whole lot of damage potential, and all of the Trick Room options on Luke's side are already fainted, or in Calyrex Ice Rider's case, pretty low on hit points. So that gives Sosuke some opportunity to come back in this game, having been a little bit behind in damage right now.
Being able to reset the sun as well and catch the Iron Hands in such an awkward position as well, where maybe you feel like you have to swap it out to reset the terrain in your favor with the Miraidon, is maybe a play that Luke can make here. Considering it's the last turn in Trick Room, a double Protect there from Sosuke's side is relatively telegraphed, as we do see Luke swap out for, the Miraidon to reset the terrain and get advantage in his next upcoming turn. Because even with the speed boost there on the Walking Wake, it's not going to be faster than a Choice Scarf from Miraidon, as we see first the Protect on the Koraidon, and then a Protect on the Walking Wake, but is actually going to fail instead. And this Glacial Lance now is going to be able to knock it out. Now it is at +1, and Sosuke has to swap in the last Pokemon.
This Calyrex Ice Rider really powered up, but going to be pretty low hit points as Trick Room ends here. But I gotta shout out, this has been a wonderful play from Luke, sort of predicting that double Protect on the last turn of Trick Room, and getting this Choice Scarf Miraidon in at exactly the right time. This Calyrex Shadow Rider is entering the field now would have been almost impossible to answer if Miraidon were not on the field, being able to get some faster damage off. Even still, it looks like that Calyrex Shadow Rider is going to be a really big threat, but because the Miraidon's faster, it has a couple of options here at least, to maybe try to pick off the Koraidon with a Volt Switch before the Calyrex Shadow Rider is able to attack, or maybe start working on that Calyrex Shadow Rider's damage output with Snarl. All the same though, this Calyrex Shadow Rider with the Choice Specs just has so much damage output that it's going to be really a challenge for Luke to be able to find a way through that damage, given that Trick Room is up, even with that Miraidon.
Yeah, absolutely. We see a Protect there from Luke's Calyrex, preserving the amount of damage that it's been able to do this entire game. A Volt Switch there from the Miraidon, able to finish off the Koraidon, though, completely ignoring this Calyrex Shadow here on Sosuke's side. Being able to switch out, though, into the Iron Hands here, it means that you're going to be able to eat this Astral Barrage or whatever the Sosuke's Calyrex Shadow wants to go for a lot better. Unfortunately, though, because it is a Ghost type, you can't go for a Fake Out or anything like that, so maybe reset up a Trick Room and solidify the game. But I think with a Choice Scarf Miraidon in the back guaranteeing the outspeed here on the Calyrex Shadow Rider, you are in a fine position to win if you are Luke.
Yeah, the only challenge is this Calyrex Shadow Rider is going to be... Oh, wow! That's actually not a 2-hit KO on that Iron Hands. That's going to be really important information going forwards. Even with the Choice Specs on the Calyrex Shadow Rider, if this Iron Hands is able to survive and do even just a little bit of chip damage, that's really going to solidify the game. And with Luke surviving with 4 hit points on the Iron Hands, that's going to be a chance to do just a little bit of damage and make sure that that Calyrex Shadow Rider is comfortably going to be knocked out by the Miraidon on the other side of the field next turn. We're gonna have to see that Wild Charge going out, boosted by the Electric Terrain, by the Burst, and this doesn't even need the Miraidon. That Iron Hand's really putting in work, showing why Luke's chosen to pick this Pokemon that hasn't been used quite so much in the Masters Division, really clutching things out for him at the end of this first game.
And you can see that small grin on his face as well, recognizing that spot that he was in. Being able to make sure that that Astral Barrage, even from a Choice Specs Calyrex, was not a 2-hit KO guaranteed there on the Iron Hands. It was absolutely amazing for Luke being able to get that attack off of the Iron Hands. Makes that endgame a lot better, right? Because then you have a single target plus 1 attack, or plus 2 if you get rid of the Iron Hands as well, into the Miraidon, and it becomes a lot more scary of an endgame. Luckily, you are Choice Scarf, so you do have the advantage as long as you can live that, but that's easier said than done to live essentially a +3, the +2 plus the Choice Scarf to live a +3 Astral Barrage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Luke's got to be really happy that Iron Hands was able to put in so much work, all of that training put in to get its special defense stat high enough with the Assault Vest to be able to survive those attacks. And as we review this game, I just really love the way that Luke played this. Positioning that Miraidon in at exactly the right moment to take out the Koraidon, being able to pivot out and have it in the back still. Just, Luke brought absolutely the right Pokemon to this game and executed so well on this Trick Room game plan with the Electric Terrain Miraidon preserved in the back to sort of set things up at the end, use that Choice Scarf once Trick Room was gone.
I think really taking good advantage there of each of the Pokemon on his team, really using them to their strengths. Farigiraf, for example, not really a Pokemon known to do damage, but providing the exact support it needed to do. That was the Helping Hand and the Trick Room, and really that's all it needed to do. And then once that was done, it was fine to go off the field because that meant a free swap into something like the Iron Hands or the Miraidon later in the game. And I think Luke really positioning around that and recognizing, you know, what each Pokemon was meant to do on the team and playing to their strengths and also their weaknesses really worked in Luke's favor.
Yeah, I really loved seeing that. Farigiraf, clearly designed to be able to take physical hits with that Electric Seed to boost its defense. Iron Hand's clearly designed to take special hits decently well with that Assault Vest. And he really was able to set up all these situations where he was relying on the Farigiraf against the physical attacker and the Iron Hands against the special attacker. Like, it was just so precisely executed as a game to be able to leverage each of these Pokemon's defensive strengths in those moments where he needed to set up a Trick Room or reposition to get that Miraidon back in later on. And so I love seeing the 2 non-restricteds that Luke picked. I'd expect to see those 2 again, and the onus is really on Sosuke to be able to adjust effectively and find something that's going to work into this option. And now we're zooming in on the faces of these trainers, going to be able to jump into this starting set as Whimsicott and Koraidon hit the field on the left. And we're going to see that double restricted lead from Luke, just like last time. But I really like this Whimsicott. It's an interesting adjustment. It does have that Endeavor option, a really unique choice. So maybe later in the game, it's going to be able to try to leverage that with its Focus Sash, surviving an attack and going for an Endeavor a little later on. And at the start here, it does threaten even that Choice Scarf Miraidon by being able to Tailwind and boost up that Koraidon. So it leaves some interesting decisions for Luke to make in terms of how to handle this lead situation. We're going to think a little bit more for both players as they try to decide how they want to navigate what is going to be a really explosive and volatile turn. There's so much damage potential from the Whimsicott and Koraidon, but at the same time, that Calyrex Ice Rider probably feels pretty comfortable about its position. It has that Terrassalization option into the Fire type to be not so vulnerable to the Flare Blitz from the Koraidon, and that's going to mean that it's in a really powerful situation to be able to set up that Trick Room option. And once it does, that's going to make situations pretty powerful for Luke's side of the field. As we see the Miraidon pivoting out immediately, not going to risk going for that Volt Switch because it doesn't want to have to deal with that Tailwind plus Koraidon attack option. Just the same play as last time, pivoting into that Farigiraf, getting the defense boost from the Electric Terrain, and we're going to actually see that Koraidon protecting, trying to avoid damage from the Miraidon in return. We're going to have to see what this Whimsicott goes for, as Calyrex once again protects, just like Luke did last time. Whimsicott, the only Pokemon left with an option to attack, just going for a taunt into that Calyrex Ice Rider.
Yeah, and that taunt's going to be absolutely huge. I think, you know, if Sosuke wants a chance to stop this Trick Room, that taunt is obviously a very surefire way to do it. You do have to be careful, though, of that Farigiraf that is on the field there for Luke. That is going to unfortunately stop the Whimsicott from going for any of those prankster moves with the priority.
So we're going to see a terrestrialization coming in now on the Koraidon. If Taunt's not going to work, if stopping the Trick Room that way won't work, then you have to do damage the old-fashioned way, and we're just going to be setting up a Fire Terra so that the Koraidon's not so weak to the Glacial Lance from the Calyrex Ice Rider, but also so that it can threaten some more damage with the Flare Blitz. Luke sees that coming, though, and is going to go for a Fire Terrestrialization on that Calyrex Ice Rider, setting up a resistance to fire damage, which is going to be so crucial if you want to make it through this turn with that Koraidon threatening so much power.
Endeavor, though, coming out from the Whimsicott to bring Furgraf into a little bit of a lower HP range, and Flare Blitz into the Furgraf instead of the Calyrex Ice Rider is going to be able to get the knockout there with a critical hit as well to guarantee it.
Really nice play from Sosuke. The question is, did Luke go for a Trick Room with the Calyrex Ice Rider? And it looks like no. Went for that Glacial Lance. Going to bring Whimsicott down, but with the Focus Sash, Whimsicott's still up at 1 hit point, and it still has a chance to set up Tailwind later. And Koraidon, having Terrasilize into that Fire type, really comfortably surviving this turn. That's such a crucial knockout for Sosuke to take, and it really changes this game from what we saw last time.
Yeah, and I really like that Endeavor play. Normally, a lot of players wait to click it until you are at a 1 HP, but clicking in that scenario allowed Sosuke to get the knockout with the Flare Blitz, and I think recognizing that how much you did with Flare Blitz last time and knowing that Whimsicott can get Furgraf down to that HP range is a very heads-up play that I think even a lot of Masters wouldn't make. But we do see the Iron Hand swap in there for Luke there in an effort to maybe go for a fake-out play, to maybe get that Trick Room set up for the Calyrex Ice. The problem, though, now is that the Whimsicott has access to that taunt, Prankster taunt into the Calyrex Ice, as well as Endeavor, which could be, detrimental to both of these Pokemon. Bringing it down to 1 HP would mean the end if Koraidon had doubled up into that slot. You do have to be careful, though, of the Iron Hand's fake out, because even if you're not able to fake it out, you are able to just knock out the Whimsicott, as we see here, with the fake out onto Sosuke's Whimsicott.
A really heads-up play from Luke, just really not wanting to deal with that 1 HP Endeavor option from Sosuke's side of the field. A bit risky because Psychic Terrain could have been set up, but instead it's just going to be the Koraidon going for a Flare Blitz, trying to take out that pesky Iron Hands that was such a problem before, but leaving the Calyrex pretty crucially with an opportunity to set up that Trick Room now. It didn't get a chance last turn, but it's happy to do this now that Koraidon's really low HP and in danger from a potential Glacial Lance.
Yeah, and I think setting up Trick Room there was really dangerous because, yes, you bring in Walking Wake here and it's decently healthy, but with Terrestrialization spent, this Walking Wake is not going to want to have to face down a Glacial Lance from this Calyrex Ice Rider in Trick Room as well. And because of how late into the game Luke has set this up as well, Glacial Lance is definitely going to be the move of choice from the next turn, for the next few turns. And with Iron Hand surviving that Flare Blitz as well, it's going to be able to support whatever KO that Luke's Calyrex Ice can't get, as Sosuke's Koraidon goes for protecting Walking Wake, a protect as well.
Yeah, Sosuke really needs to burn through this Trick Room if that's the Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back. Gonna take a low kick into that protect on the Walking Wake slot, and likely a Glacial Lance into both of these. Yep, that's confirmed. So Sosuke buying a little bit of time with Trick Room, but not advancing the board state very much. It looks like exactly those same attacks again from Luke's side of the field is pretty close to guaranteeing a double knockout on Sosuke's side. So Luke has really set up this Trick Room phenomenally, and crucially, because that Iron Hand survived that really powerful Flare Blitz, it's just able to do that little bit of extra damage needed to make sure that that Walking Wake even is in a lot of danger here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, if you are Sosuke, it's really limiting in terms of options of what you can do. Maybe, you find a double protect somewhere in there and you still have enough time for Calyrex Shadow Rider to come in here. But the real problem is that, yeah, you are going to have to swap the Walking Wake to preserve that water damage in the Calyrex. And yeah, it has to come in here on this Glacial Lance, but being choice specs, you don't have the option of protecting for Sosuke. So you really have to just trade HP here, and that's really the only option. As Koraidon, though, gets the double protect for Sosuke. That's 1 protect closer to getting out of Trick Room. Low kick, though, into the Walking Wake slot as a Glacial Lance falls up into it. If it is able to hang on here, this is still playable.
Definitely, switching into the immunity was really powerful, but with the Calyrex Shadow Rider hanging on, definitely not going to be able to take another of those Glacial Lances. And with 2 more turns of Trick Room left, it's going to be really tough for Sosuke now. I think almost everything on the field is KO'd by Glacial Lance, and the Pokemon in the back is not going to be enough to clean this match out. And Calyrex Shadow Rider can't even protect because it has the choice specs, so it's going to be really tough for Sosuke to make it through the last couple of turns here. We're going to see the Calyrex Shadow Rider pivoting out back into the Walking Wake. It really needs to stay around to be able to finish off this end game. Walking Wake pivoting back in, and we're going to see the Koraidon maybe going for a Protect or something. As first, we're going to see that Photosynthesis activating. This poor Walking Wake, its speed keeps getting boosted, but it keeps being in Trick Room. And that Drain Punch is going to finish off the Koraidon, healing up that Iron Hands just a little bit. But the important thing is Sosuke's now down to just 2 Pokemon, and that Glacial Lance that's about to come out is going to be single target on this poor Walking Wake. We'll have to see how much damage that does. If it's a KO, then Luke has all but guaranteed being a world champion. Glacial Lance coming out into that Walking Wake, and it's gonna be a lot of damage, but that Walking Wake showing off its bulk. Still has about a quarter of hit points left. At this point, though, things are looking pretty tough for Sosuke. 2 Pokemon at 25% health versus 3 Pokemon on Luke's side of the field, and there's still a turn of Trick Room up. And that Calyrex Shadow Rider cannot protect. So it's definitely going down this next turn, and that's going to make things pretty tough for Sosuke going forwards. It looks like Luke just has a couple more turns, has to be thinking about potentially becoming crowned as a world champion as this Calyrex Ice Rider and Iron Hands select their last move in Trick Room. We're going to have to see what that is shortly.
And I really like the way Luke has positioned himself under this Trick Room as well to kind of get as much damage as possible and really use the fact that he set up Trick Room at the stage of the game that he did. The Miraidon here swapping in, though, to preserve that Iron Hands and the potential Fake Out as the Walking Wake there for Sosuke goes for the Protect. You know, Calyrex has to go for that Glacial Lance, though, and Sosuke's Calyrex has to take it, unfortunately, here. And at this range, I'm not sure if it's going to be able to survive. Luke also having that.
Yeah, definitely very convincing way of ending this Trick Room out. Calyrex Ice Rider with a nice attack boost, and the Miraidon once again coming in on the last turn of Trick Room, able to go for this Electro Drift and crown Luke Whittier as the world champion in the juniors division for 2025. Congratulations to Luke for 2 phenomenally executed game plans. Oh, and the family cheering and everything, so sweet. We're gonna be jumping to an interview soon, I believe, but congratulations to Luke for 2 incredibly well played games, really executing on this wonderful concept and navigating what I think was a really tough matchup, setting up those Trick Rooms really effectively to make it through a really threatening Calyrex Shadow Rider. I'm really impressed by Luke's play here. One more thing to shout out, these players both really were able to execute, demonstrate how powerful they were. They brought some really amazing teams. They executed a lot of really good strategies, and I think we're going to jump into replays shortly to be able to showcase some of those key decisions that they made. We see the Koraidon going for a Flare Blitz. Getting all of those, getting that KO on the Fridge Ref was so huge. I really loved how Sosuke adjusted. That Endeavor and Flare Blitz, especially with the Whimsicott being faster, really demonstrated that Sosuke has a ton of skills that are going to serve him very well if he continues in Pokemon. I was so impressed at this game plan. And the crucial turn was just that Iron Hands confidently going for Fake Out into the Whimsicott, even though there was a risk of Psychic Terrain being set up, really was enough to guarantee that this Trick Room could get set up this turn, and was really an excellent way of managing that Whimsicott's ability to deal with things like Taunt.
Yeah, and I think Taunt as well being a kind of pivotal piece, but unfortunate that you can't really do it in the face of a Farigiraf. Farigiraf there blocking the priority move really allowed Luke to get in a spot. Even with, again, going down, was able to set up Trick Room with the Calyrex Ice Rider instead. And that's kind of the benefit of these teams is you have 2 options there to set up the Trick Room. It's not just one way. There's 2 in the Farigiraf and the Calyrex Ice. But Sosuke, unfortunately, is going to lose. And Luke Witter is going to be your junior final or winner of the World Championships.
Congratulations to Luke, a very well-deserved title, and I was really impressed seeing that play. I think we were talking before the match, and I was certainly expecting that the Indeedee and Shadow Rider team was going to be able to just dominate, but Luke had such a clear plan and some really well-trained Pokemon that Iron Hands survived so many attacks, and it really just pulled things through for Luke.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we didn't have the knowledge of as well is that Iron Hands not getting to it KO'd by that Astro Barrage was very big reveal in game 1, and definitely I feel like threw Sosuke off their game plans there to maybe get that knockout and be able to win the game that way. But if they were able to, I think that game is very different as well. And I think with things like Farragraph as well, it's kind of maybe deceptively good. It's not, you know.
Amazing. And also amazing. This is insane.
Yeah? What's it like being up on this big stage?
Crazy.
There's lots of people here cheering for you. They're excited. Is there anyone you want to say hello or thank you to?
I would like to say thank you to all my friends in the USA and also to my parents and my coach, Christopher Hahn.
Thank you all for that support. And let's hear it one more time for Luke Whittier. Thank you, Luke. We'll let you go celebrate off.
Wonderful to see.
That was so heartwarming.
Yeah, absolutely. Look so excited to have won with a wonderful coach. It sounds like a wonderful support system. Really exciting to see these young players really catching such a love for the game and having such cool communities around that.
Yeah, and funny as well is that Chris Hahn as well, being someone who also aged up from those divisions, you know, just made his way into Masters, graduating throughout all those divisions as well. So to pass that knowledge on to the next generation is always amazing to see.
It makes me wonder now who Luke is going to coach as he engages up into later divisions. But we're going to be jumping pretty far.
Welcome, Kevin. And now to challenge, please welcome from Korea, Xian Lee.
All right, we're going to be jumping straight into the seniors division with two players being introduced, pushing through all of these wonderful matches as Xian Li is able to enter. We're going to be able to pause for a sec for a quick interview here.
Welcome to the stage. We just have a quick moment with each of you, so I want to know what's going through your head right now. What are you doing to try to prepare for the match?
I'm feeling very nervous, but I'm very excited. It's the first time Worlds has hosted an arena like this, and I get to experience it.
That's awesome. We're rooting for you both. What about you? What's going through your mind right now as you prepare for the match?
예, 선수님 지금 마음이 어떠신가요?
지금 굉장히 행복합니다.
I am just so happy to be here.
We have time for one more question. So, what do you want the audience to watch for? What's going to be your signature, the coolest thing that you do? What do you want to be known for that they can look for?
Glacial Lance.
All right, you heard it. And same question, what should the audience look for? What will they remember about your play?
선수님 경기에서 주의 볼 게 하나가 있을까요?
오버폰이 잘해줄 것 같습니다.
My overpun is pretty great.
All right, keep your eyes open. Go ahead and take your seats.
Some really exciting little words from these players as they jump into this match. Very excited to hear the shout out of the Ogre Pun. That's what Xian's really trusting into this match. One of my caster picks for things in the World Championship, so it's fun to get to see that coming out.
It's not Brew Bonnet, but it's definitely a grass type to look out for in this regulation, and to be able to redirect things with Spore, not just in Rage Powder, but Follow Me, an even stronger version of that Rage Powder is super vital to what makes Ogerpon even good, and then also having those different masks variations, 4 different typings of this Pokemon that you can use on your team. The flexibility and choices of it are just endless, and you know, the Fire one in particular, right, making a lot of waves as well, just its typing actually works very nice, offensively and defensively.
Yeah, on the other side, though, we've got Kevin shouting out that Calyrex Ice Rider with the Glacial Lance, I should say, really is just, I think, the strongest move I've ever seen in any game. It's so powerful to be able to make use of that. And we're going to have to see if Kevin's able to execute and get enough Glacial Lances off to be able to win here. But first, we're going to preview the journey these trainers took to get to these finals.
Yeah, and Kevin Hahn and Xian Lead here, being the finalists here, have worked so hard for the seasons. It looks like another bracket of 2-0s for each of the players. So just so much talent here, and very clearly in their games as well is so insane.
Yeah, extraordinary to be able to get all of those 2-0 victories in Top Cut against such incredible players. And so both players, very rightfully so, must be feeling really confident headed into this match. But of course, we can only crown one of them. So I'm very curious to see how this matchup works out. Both of these players really have shown the potential to be able to win this tournament, even just by getting to the finals. But there's so much of their journey left to go in this final match for a really high stakes result.
Yeah, and it really is the finals, and you can feel the pressure. I mean, even in that previous game, regardless of the age division, we said it before, these matches are high stakes. They're high effort. All the prep you go in through and all the mental that you have to have, even in that game, to make it as close as possible. There is no more chances. This isn't Swiss anymore. There's no extra next round. This is the final. This is the last set of the weekend that you have to play. You have to win to become the world champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And unlike in the juniors division, these players definitely old enough to have known that they're preparing for a really high stakes match and have had 24 hours to think about it. So there's a ton that's going to be decided based on these players' skill at Pokemon and the wonderful teams they've brought. And a little bit that I think is also going to be decided by just how well they've been navigating the mentality of getting to be the first players, as Kevin said, to be able to play in an arena. It's such a wonderful and exciting experience, but also certainly a nerve-wracking one for a pretty intense match that we're about to see.
Yeah, and Kevin Hahn as well, being Chris Hahn's younger brother as well, actually, funny enough, being able to see, Chris's influence in both of the divisions here is very, very funny to see. Seeing your brother, I'm sure, in that spot is so, so rewarding. I'm sure we'll hear another thank you to Coach Chris later, regardless of the results.
That's so lovely to see all of the interactions between players in different divisions as they age up. It's a good day to be Christopher Hahn, I suppose, today, getting to see so many matches that are so related to Coach Chris.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to get to look at these teams as well. I don't believe we got a preview of them while our players are sitting down and doing a pre-interview there. But again, these are very interesting teams. They're not, as straightforward as something like Choice Specs, Helping Hand, Expanding Force, like we were looking at the other team, but still very, very nuanced in not only the way they play, but in their building.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of really interesting nuance. We've got, again, a Calyrex Shadow Rider versus Calyrex Ice Rider match, just to sort of be able to preview that. And it's going to be really interesting to see. We saw how pivotal being able to set up Trick Room and survive damage was in the juniors division. And I think that's a totally different puzzle in the seniors division, as both players have a wider range of options in their arsenal for how to try to stop those Trick Rooms and how to try to find a lot of damage in to really punish getting that set up.
Yeah, and I think as well, we're going to get to see a very similar matchup to something we would have seen at maybe NAIC, that being the Calyrex Shadow Rider and the Zamazenta, just how they support each other. I mean, we mentioned it before as well with the Ogre Pond. That whole team just kind of works together in such a beautiful way that the pieces just align together and you can kind of create game plans on the fly, but still have solid ones that you can bring into, certain kinds of teams, but still have the flexibility of adjusting on the fly to how your opponents may be playing the team, because of course that can vary from player to player as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the players both told a pretty good preview story of their matchup just by talking about the thing that they wanted to be known for. I think Ogerpon is an incredibly flexible Pokemon. It can play in that really defensive way. It can go for a ton of damage. This is the Ogerpon Hearthflame, so it has that ability to boost its attack with the Terra. And so there's a ton of flexibility from that side to be able to punish the Trick Room. But of course, over on Kevin's side with the Calyrex Ice Rider, as soon as that setup is able to happen, if you're able to support it, those Glacial Lances, nothing wants to take a lot of Glacial Lances, except maybe a Zamazenta, and that's about it. And so if Kevin's able to play well enough to get that set up, then I think things are going to be really tough for Xian to navigate around.
Yeah, and it really is going to come down to who can maybe deal with the other restricted a little bit more and maybe, lose less HP along the way. And that's going to be easier said than done with explosive options from both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really tough situation to be in playing this high stakes match when both players have so many different options. Like there's pretty often in these turns we're looking at, I suspect that both players are going to have to realize that the moves that they commit to all have pretty high risk of something going wrong. And that's going to be really interesting to navigate across a best of 3 set. There are plenty of ways to control for it, but navigating the whole, oh wow, I have to click a move that might lose the World Championships or win it is such an interesting thing for these players to be thinking about as we jump into starting to see some of these teams as the players are about finished setting up.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to get to analyze these as well, because I think the best way of explaining both of these teams and how they work is that they're just a bunch of good Pokemon. You can bring any 4 of these here, even on CN's team here, as we see, just are good Pokemon. Every single one of them can be brought and have some sort of value to the team. And I misspoke earlier when I said this team wasn't CN's, but we're actually going to see the Calyrex Shadow Rider and the Zamazenta, the Incineroar, Raging Bolt, Ogerpon, Hearthflame, and Rillaboom here. And this is a really, really, cool team. We saw Marco get second with it at NAIC, and it's just, again, a very strong team and a collection of very good Pokemon.
Yeah, absolutely. There's especially that Fake Out Blender Core, the Incineroar, and the Rillaboom, which might be super relevant for trying to find ways to navigate around Trick Room, given that on the other side of the field there isn't any option like that for Giraffe from the Juniors Finals to stop the Fake Out. So a couple of really good support options, the Calyrex Shadow Rider and Zamazenta that we've been seeing just performing so well in the Masters division, and a few really powerful alternative tools with the Ogerpon, Hearthflame, and the Raging Bolt as well. Xian just has a collection of a bunch of incredibly strong Pokemon, and clearly knows how to use them exceptionally well, having dominated with 2 victories getting into this finals.
Yeah, and I think as well, with just how much flexibility as well, it really is going to be on the opposing side to really have a response for those tools. And even things like the Nasty Plot, if not kept in check, could be very dangerous there and can steamroll out of control very, very quickly if not dealt with properly. But we see Kevin's team here running the Calyrex Ice Rider and the Miraidon there. We got a little bit of a preview of it from last game in a previous division, but this time instead of a Fergraph, we're going to see an Amoonguss instead of the Fergraph. So only one way to set up the Trick Room this time around, but with a lot more supportive pieces that maybe are more generally balanced, like the Amoonguss, to go for those Rage Powders, while normally someone would have to just target straight down to the Fergraph. Amoonguss can just guarantee that it itself is attacked instead of its partner, Calyrex Ice.
Yeah, it's a really interesting choice to use an Amoonguss on this composition. Of course, the Miraidon really working against its ability to go for Spores, but still having all of that power with Rage Powder and Pollen Puff, being one of the oldest, most tried and true Trick Room supporters for that Calyrex Ice Rider mode. It definitely gives some interesting options as well, because there isn't a safety goggles on the other side of the field. So being able to redirect those body presses from Zamazenta, but also being able to Spore the Incineroar or the Raging Bolt in situations where the electric terrain is gone. So it might be a really interesting bring from Kevin Hahn here.
Yeah, and with it, Assault Vest and Incineroar on the team as well, being able to eat those Astral Barrages is going to be very important, as well as the choice Focus Sash there on the Urshifu Rapid Strike is going to be able to eat a big hit potentially from the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and that could be very, very nice at giving some extra survivability to maybe finish off a low Calyrex Shadow Rider with an attack. And we know how many times that has been very, very viable to work out and win games.
Yeah, one interesting thing about that Urshifu, though, it has a Focus Sash until it attacks into an Incineroar, and then it's going to have to lose that to the Rocky Helmet from the Incineroar on the other side of the field. So a couple of tools that Xian still has to be able to kind of mitigate its effectiveness, but with that Sash, it seems like a really strong option. But we're actually going to just see Incineroar and Calyrex Ice Rider, tried and true, given a lot of Trick Room options, against Rillaboom and Calyrex Shadow Rider. So the two Calyrexes facing off on their respective horses next to their respective fake-out supporters.
That's really funny the way you said it as well. Even the fake outers being the different ones as well. Rillaboom and Incineroar, the known duo of that fake out blender that you had mentioned before, just having both opposing sides, in not only in terms of the horses, but the fake outers as well, is such a cool parallel to see here in the senior finals. And, Rillaboom normally is the faster one, so as well as the horse there being in the Shadow Rider. So I think seeing here being able to have the faster Pokemon is definitely more advantageous. But where they're lacking in speed, Kevin has a lot of bulk, and not only in the Assault Vest on the Incineroar, but with that Terastallization Fire on Kevin's Kyrex Ice is going to be able to eat the Astral Barrage a lot better, as we see the first Terastallization of Game 1. That is the Terra Fire there on Kevin's Kyrex Ice.
Getting rid of that Astral Barrage weakness pretty crucially, because there's no other way to stop that Cataracts Shadow Rider from going for an attack. As Fake Out, as you mentioned, going to just go into that Incineroar, and then Astral Barrage is going to come out here, but no longer hitting super effectively, and giving that Cataracts Ice Rider an opportunity here to potentially go for a Trick Room and invert those speeders. So we were just talking about before, Incineroar being slower than Rillaboom was a problem for Kevin Han last turn, but it sure isn't a problem now with this Incineroar in prime position to fire off some super effective attacks into either slot, next to a Calyrex Ice Rider that's really happy to shine and show off a couple of those Glacial Lances that Kevin was telling us about in the pre-match interview.
Yeah, and Glacial Lance is definitely something that's going to have to be considered here, right? Both your Pokemon, or one of your Pokemon is weak to it, the other is not really happy to take it either, and with an Incineroar staring it down as well, is not going to want to take a potential double up. The thing that Kevin has to consider, though, is that if this Calyrex does go for Protect, then your attack is for naught if it goes into the Calyrex from Incineroar, and that can be very dangerous because that allows Cian to reposition something like the Rillaboom for later in the game. As we see, yeah, just a hard swap here to preserve it, not wanting to take that Glacial Lance into an Incineroar of their own, and getting an Intimidate down, not onto the Calyrex, thanks to that Clear Amulet, but even into the Incineroar here is absolutely great. Glacial Lance, though, going to fire off. No Protect from the Calyrex, notably as well, bringing it to a little under 50%, and a Flare Blitz to follow up into that Rillaboom slot.
A really incredible read to bring the Calyrex Shadow Rider out and not go for the Protect, even with the threatened KO. Really going to pay off here with another Astral Barrage firing off. Almost going to be enough to take out that Calyrex Ice Rider, bringing it down below 50 hit points. Although the Grassy Terrain is going to bring it just a little bit higher. But there was so much risk to not protecting that Calyrex Shadow Rider, and it paid off so much, Sean, being able to go for that call there.
Yeah, and I think not going for the attack allows Cian to burn a turn of Trick Room in a way that normally you can't. It's very predicted where you have to go for Protect, then maybe swap to preserve some damage, but being able to fish in an attack and not have to use a Protect means that it's now an option for Cian in this upcoming turn. Kevin still, though, has, I think, a lot of the pressure on the board with Calyrex still having HP at all, is able to go for another Glacial Lance. It, of course, does have to face down that Fake Out from the Incineroar that has just swapped in for Cian, but besides that, you know, you have a potential knockout into the Calyrex. We actually see a helping hand there on the Calyrex.
Wow, such high risk, but Kevin calls it and doesn't play defensively around that Fake Out pressure and is going to be able to finish off the Calyrex Shadow Rider. So the Calyrex on the Ice Horse is dominating the Calyrex on the Shadow Horse, getting an attack boost. That was such a high-risk play from Xion that really hasn't played off, as Kevin now has an opportunity to reposition with still a bunch more turns of Trick Room left and a Calyrex Ice Rider with an attack boost already. That would have been so cool for Xion if the read had gone out differently, but Kevin making a wonderful call here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got away with the previous other two turns. Maybe it was a little bit greedy to try to go get away with another huge play like that again on this third turn. But honestly, if it worked, I think it would have won Cian the game, right? If you go for a Helping Hand Astral Barrage and you get it in that position, you're just so far ahead. You're assuming the Calyrex Ice to maybe Protect or swap out, and you'd be so far ahead. But Rillaboom here, getting to Fake Out and make up for what Incineroar couldn't do with that Helping Hand. Unfortunately, though, it does have to face down a Amoonguss, and, you know, Amoonguss is going to have the ability to Spore. So Cian really has to make a decision of which Pokemon they want to Fake Out, because you either get put to sleep on your Incineroar or you get Glacial Lance on your Rillaboom. And Kevin is really happy, I'm sure, to have made that last turn work in his favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin getting a great call off, making the most use of Trick Room here. We are going to see a Terastallization, so maybe a sign that Xion has a plan for getting around this Glacial Lance. Going to be able to resist it with both Pokemon, but that does mean now this Amoonguss later on, as a Fake Out goes into it for this turn, next turn it's going to be able to take its choice of Spore target, as this Calyrex Ice Rider is going to fire up a high horsepower, but going to miss the Incineroar, crucially giving Incineroar a chance to pivot out and preserve that Fake Out tool for later. If Xion was going to find a way into this game, I think it starts with dodging a high horsepower.
Yeah, and unfortunately there, that miss is going to allow that Incineroar to re-pivot out into something different, and that being the Zamazenta here. And Zamazenta now being in a great position in front of this Calyrex. You are going to have to worry about this Amoonguss sporing you down under this Trick Room, but with the turns ticking down and this being the last one, all the Zamazenta has to do is go for a Protect.
So Zamazenta is going to be able to get out of the Trick Room without going to sleep, but I still think that Amoonguss is going to be a pretty big problem. It's going to be able to throw off a Pollen Puff here, bring that Calyrex Ice Rider almost all the way back up to full health, and give a chance for a high horsepower into that Rillaboom, which is going to just get a KO because of that attack boost the Calyrex Ice Rider had earlier. But crucially, even though that Zamazenta had a Telegraph Protect, it's not going for it this time, so it's going to have a chance to maybe use a Body Press and try to even the score a little bit. But it may be too little too late as this Calyrex Ice Rider sitting at +2 attack and half health with a nice, comfortable redirection option next to it now with that Amoonguss at almost full hit points.
Yeah, and I think as well with the grass disappearing, that's going to be no more healing. The Amoonguss, though, being able to sit there next to the Calyrex and just heal it up is such a dangerous position. And without something like the Calyrex Shadow Rider to really damage it anymore, yes, you bring in Incineroar, but I don't really know if this is going to be enough, especially since you can't intimidate the Calyrex Ice Rider.
Yeah, I think at this point, both players really need to be starting to think about Game 2. There's only so much time to think about those leads, and it's just so clear the writing's on the wall. Both of these Pokemon can just protect around the Fake Out, although it looks like they aren't going for it yet. It's going to be a helping hand from the Zamazenta trying to get a cheeky little Body Press in and maybe finish off the Calyrex Ice Rider, but the Protect coming out here on the Calyrex Ice Rider are going to be able to keep things pretty safe for Kevin's side of the field. And now that the Fake Out pressure is gone, I think there's a pretty clearly telegraphed Rage Powder and any old attack from the Calyrex Ice Rider, or really Kevin's choice of ways to close out this game. He really has all the tools that he needs to be able to be starting to think about that next game. We're going to see a helping hand come out from that Incineroar again. Same play as before. We'll have to see if that Amoonguss redirects everything. It's going to go for that Rage Powder, so this poor Zamazenta, sure, it can do some damage, but it's not making any progress against that Calyrex. It's going to be a heavy slam, taking Amoonguss down to about half HP, but this +2 attack Calyrex Ice Rider is about to show us what it's got, and that's a high horsepower. It connects this time into that Incineroar. Calyrex making up for that miss earlier. So it looks like there's a little bit more to play out for this particular turn, but with just a Zamazenta down, I wouldn't be surprised to see Xian go for a forfeit. I think something that's really interesting about this, though, Amoonguss just going to continue Rage Powdering away. This Amoonguss has been so devastating from Kevin's side of the field, really making that Zamazenta struggle to find usefulness here. And I think that really shows why Xian was going for those aggressive plays earlier, because it's really important to try to catch something like that Amoonguss on a switch-in with a Helping Hand, Astral Barrage, or Psychic. If it's not caught on a switch-in like happened in this game, then it really can just take over the game on its own next to that Calyrex.
And with Trick Room as well, you're able to go for a Spore here into the Zamazenta, just to guarantee that if you are able to knock out the Amoonguss, there's going to be no ways around it. High horsepower, though, missing again there. Zamazenta is going to get to burn a turn of sleep, though. I mean, Kevin is winning this end game here so far, but maybe if the Zamazenta has a way to wake up, I can break through. If, we see the Pollen Puff come out here in the Calyrex, does go for the high horsepower, is able to get it though, and just get the knockout. Maybe if there's a world where you dodge an infinite amount of high horsepowers there's a way to get back in that. But that is going to be game 1 for Kevin, and that was still very, very close. If there was a single turn that, another move missed, or Xian got one of those aggressive reads right, then it definitely could have swung in their favor for sure.
Yeah, very clearly the pivotal turn was the Helping Hand plus whatever attack was coming out from the Calyrex Shadow Rider. It was a really high risk but potentially high reward play, and it just happened not to work out for Xian. We're going to see a quick review of that switch turn, which was a really cool way to get started on managing this Trick Room. I really liked the way that Xian was playing into this Fake Out Blender pressure option. Even catching that Flare Blitz not going into the Calyrex Shadow Rider was great. But as you mentioned, just trying to go for that twice in a row happened not to work out here and wound up being a pretty high-risk play. And pretty much as soon as this Calyrex Shadow Rider went down, things were looking pretty tough for Xian. So I think Xian has some pretty clear thinking to do about how to play out those first few turns once Trick Room is up, knowing that this Amoonguss can really just run away with the game once Trick Room is there.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw in the last game Trick Room and with his Calyrex Ice Rider being such a devastating combo. Even without Iron Hands, though, instead of having the support of the Amoonguss like we talked about before the game, being a bit more active than Photograph, instead of just setting up Trick Room and clicking Helping Hand, actually being able to click Pollen Puff in your own Calyrex Ice to heal it up from those dangerous attacks, as well as put things to sleep, is so detrimental if you leave it to its own devices.
Yeah, Amoonguss was really just phenomenally executed here. And I think something else that's really important is because this Amoonguss worked so well, Sean never even got to see the fourth Pokemon that Kevin was bringing. So there's no confirmation if maybe it was that Miraidon hanging out in the back for when Trick Room is done, which maybe is exploitable from Xian because once Electric Terrain goes up, there's no more Spore options. Or if it was something else like the Urshifu or the Landorus Incarnate. Kevin really could have brought a couple of different Pokemon there depending on what was expected. And Xian really just not getting a ton of information from this first game. Went for a really cool read, but it happened not to work out, and now Xian is really on the back foot and needs to find something pretty quickly if he wants to be able to bring this to a game 3.
Yeah, and I think maybe an adjustment there is maybe putting your foot on the gas just immediately and trying to maybe get the Zamazenta in a lot earlier, because we saw it be brought in relatively late in that game, and the Calyrex Ice was able to click Glacial Lance because of that. So maybe setting up a wide guard as well as having an immediate resist on the field that pressures Calyrex in some way maybe is beneficial for Cian here to get some pressure onto it and maybe not let it run away with the game like it did in that game 1.
Yeah, the question is definitely how to keep Kevin from running away with the game here. I think the fake out also just gives a ton of options, but gonna be tough to figure things out, especially because that Zamazenta option, even though it was great at controlling potentially Calyrex Ice Rider damage, it has Wide Guard and things, just really isn't going to be a workable choice if that Amoonguss is sitting on the field and able to comfortably Spore everything, or Pollen Puff the Calyrex Ice Rider back up.
Yeah, and I think Kevin did a great job as well at preserving the HP of the Pokemon and preserving information. Like you said, we didn't even get a reveal of that fourth Pokemon. So to not even know what it is, I'm sure Cian is super stressed to maybe not even know what that fourth Pokemon, and to build a game plan around that can be super risky. But, you know, Cian definitely made it this far. They were able to make it to the finals of the World Champions, so I wouldn't put it past them to bring it to a game 3 as we get our leads here as the Calyrex Ice Rider and Miraidon come out for Kevin, and the Incineroar and Calyrex Shadow from Cian here, sticking to the same lead from game 1.
I believe it's actually a switch up of the fake out user. Sean saying, oh, I brought Rillaboom last time and it didn't work out so well for me. I'm going to try Incineroar this time. But that might actually be working to Xian's detriment a little bit, because there's no longer the immediate option to reset the terrain. And this Miraidon is now going to be able to function in Electric Terrain for a little bit, unless Xian wants to immediately pivot into that Rillaboom. And then the Intimidate not even activating on the Calyrex Ice Rider because of that Clear Amulet item. Incineroar's got fake out that is bringing to the table, but not too much else.
Yeah, and we see a Terastallization here off the bat. In the Calyrex Ice Rider there with the Terra Fire. This is again to prevent it from taking super effective damage from Astral Brush. And as you said, the Incineroar that's now on the field instead of the Rillaboom. Protect though on the Calyrex Shadow Rider there from Cian. We see Kevin putting his hands together, Volt Switch into the Incineroar though, doing over 50%, being able to swap out. What Pokemon is Kevin bringing in though? It looks like maybe it's going to be, something else. It could be literally anything, but Incineroar is going to be the Pokemon of choice for Kevin there to get an Intimidate of his own there onto the Incineroar. And without Fake Out here, that means the Calyrex is going to get to go for a move of its own. As the Incineroar goes for a knockoff, removing the Assault Vest from Kevin's Incineroar. Trick Room, though, getting set up for Kevin is an amazing turn 1, and I think exactly what he wanted to see.
I think that might be the perfect turn from Kevin. Being able to take that risk of not protecting the Calyrex Ice Rider at all, even though there was fake out pressure, get that Volt Switch off into the Incineroar while the Calyrex Shadow Rider protected. Really, nothing could have gone even a little bit better for Kevin here. And now Trick Room is set up immediately with Incineroar threatening a lot of damage to that Calyrex Shadow Rider. And the Protector's even burned on the Calyrex Shadow Rider, so it can't even play defensively. That's so phenomenal from Kevin's side of the field.
Yeah, to not even be able to get burned or intimidated is so huge, as we see the Calyrex try to preserve its Focus Sash and swap out. This is going to be into that Zamazenta, getting to come in a little bit earlier this game, going to take a Glacial Lance a lot better than its previous Pokemon that was in that slot. Glacial Lance, though, still doing a sizable chunk to the Incineroar there. Knockoff finally removing the Clear Amulet, but the damage might have already been done from this Calyrex, as Flare Blitz is the move into that slot, doing so much to the Zamazenta there, even at +1, thanks to that Dauntless Shield.
A wonderful call to know that Calyrex probably had to switch out and be able to go for a Flare Blitz there. That really reduces Zamazenta's ability to weather the storm of this Trick Room. Now it might be pretty close to in range from a high horsepower or even just another Flare Blitz. That really makes Xian, they've got very few resources left for handling these next couple of turns of Trick Room, and Kevin's just playing phenomenally so far.
Yeah, and Zamazenta there going for Protect, trying to weather its way through this Trick Room as the high horsepower there lands into the Incineroar. We saw a moment of hesitation. The animations take so long that, you know, it almost looked like it missed, but being able to connect in the crucial time of need here for Kevin's Calyrex Ice is able to get that attack boost. U-turn, though, going off into the Zamazenta, maybe expecting a pivot back into Calyrex Shadow Rider is not going to be able to swap out. But the Calyrex Shadow Rider coming back in for the other slot for Xian instead.
So Calyrex Shadow Rider finally gets to hit the field. It does have a way to Terrastalize out of being weak to the Incineroar, and then there's the Wide Guard option from the Zamazenta to try to stop the Glacial Lance. So Xian is now back in position to maybe stall a little bit longer. Calyrex Shadow Rider just going for a Protect, hoping some targeting goes off there. And it looks like it's a high horsepower going into that Protect, as well as we'll have to see where that Incineroar attack goes. It is the Flare Blitz. If Zamazenta can... Oh, and that's just to double up into the Calyrex Shadow Rider. So Xian finally going for Protect with his Calyrex Shadow Rider and landing it so effectively. And that's going to be a Body Press, taking a bunch of Calyrex's hit points down. With only one more turn of Trick Room left and Wide Guard available from the Zamazenta, if Flare Blitz on high horsepower isn't a KO like Kevin was going for this turn, then I think Xian has a lot of options to set things up now.
And without Amoonguss on the field here, Calyrex is going to go down to either an Astral Barrage or a Body Press without a way to heal back up your Calyrex. This is looking very dangerous as we see a Protect there onto the Zamazenta. The high horsepower, though, going over to the Calyrex, able to land. If this is a double up, that's going to be a knockout there onto the Calyrex. A critical hit to seal the deal as well. Now down to the last two Pokemon. How is Xian going to find a way back into this game?
You can see Kevin Hahn on the player cam so excited there to have gotten that targeting right and gotten another KO out of Trick Room. That Calyrex Shadow Rider would have been such a problem if it were still around, but now just 2 Pokemon left for Xian, and the Rillaboom hitting the field, now forced to have hit the field before the Miraidon, so Miraidon in the back is going to be able to set up its choice of terrain later, and things are looking pretty great for Kevin. There's this turn now where Zamazenta can pressure a lot of damage with Body Presses, but all Kevin has to do is preserve some Pokemon while that Miraidon hits the field, and there's a lot of options opening up.
Yeah, I mean, even if the Calyrex goes down, the cool thing about Zamazenta is you can only target down one thing. You can either get the knockout there on the Incineroar or on the Calyrex, and it seems like we chose the Incineroar here, giving Kevin a free swap to whatever he chooses, that being the Amoonguss to redirect a potential Body Press, and then hopefully you eat the Wood Hammer, or you could bring them right on, as you said, and just go for straight attacks and remove the Grassy Terrain overall. The benefit of that is you are removing the healing from Zamazenta as well. And with the Choice Scarf, you're able to guaranteed outspeed and just attack, attack, attack.
Now, one thing that's interesting is this might depend a little bit on the last Pokemon that Kevin has. Because sure, the Miraidon can do a lot of damage with all of these attacks, but that Zamazenta has a Terrastalization option into Dragon-type to resist Electric. And if the Miraidon locks into Draco Meteors, it's going to have to find a way to be able to pivot out, or it's not really going to make it through that Assault Vest Rillaboom. So there's still a little bit of awkwardness for Kevin to try to navigate here. Definitely still a strong position, but that Calyrex Ice Rider, pretty easy to probably KO this turn. And as that Terrastalization comes out for Dragon-type, if the Miraidon's just going for Volt Switches or things, it's not going to be doing too much damage just yet.
Yeah, the Dragon Terrastalization there, saving it to the very last moment. Electro Drift, no Draco Meteor is going to be the move locked in here. Zamazenta does not go down. Those Grassy Terrain turns actually added up a lot. Body Press, though, instead of going for the Calyrex, tries to go for the Miraidon, isn't able to knock out the Calyrex with the Wood Hammer, though. And this Calyrex is going to be able to follow up with a Glacial Lance, and double super effective is going to be able to get a double knockout, and Kevin Hahn 2-0 is going to be your world champion.
he called it in the pre-match interview. He said Glacial Lance was pretty strong and just demonstrated that in peak form there. Going for what I think Xion had to go for with that wood hammer, but it just wasn't enough damage into that Calyrex Ice Rider, and that really solidified the deal. This Calyrex Ice Rider took so many KOs in this match, I think almost all of them, and it's been really amazing to see just an extraordinarily skilled player using this Calyrex Ice Rider Miraidon composition, same as in juniors, with maybe some advice even from Christopher Hahn, same as in juniors, really just executing phenomenally, showing us that he is a player to watch out for in the future. What a wonderful showing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone's ready in the Masters division to face down that Trick Room team, especially here as we replay through the game, just how dangerous it was once Kevin got that Trick Room set up. Being able to take KO after KO, the Incineroar, then the Calyrex Shadow Rider, piece by piece, Kevin made his way through the opposing Shadow Rider team and, you know, was able to find a way to victory with these Glacial Lances and high horsepowers in this, you know, bulky Pokemon that is the Calyrex Ice Rider.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to shout out, this Calyrex Ice Rider was really a perfect choice for this tournament. A ton of the Calyrex Ice Riders in the Masters division have been trying out different sets, dropping that high horsepower, in part because that high horsepower can miss, in part because it's really nice to have Leech Seed as an option for lots of other reasons. But Kevin just really executing on exactly the right moves, was really able to make it through. Pretty much every Pokemon was so threatened by the Calyrex Ice Rider, and it really paid off so well, especially with the phenomenal execution. Those were just some incredibly clean Trick Room lines that Kevin was able to find here.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny, right? Both of the juniors and seniors being 2-0 victories, not only through their entire brackets, but even in the finals as well. Just shows how dominant both of these divisions can be. And with the similar teams nonetheless as well, that Calyrex Ice Rider and the Miraidon, just being able to show once you get those Trick Rooms set up and are able to analyze which pieces you need to take, in the right hands could be absolutely devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so many tools for so many different modes in that team, and I think Kevin did a great job of demonstrating both of them. Just there's so much threat and pressure from that Calyrex Ice Rider, and it's been really interesting to see. I guess the pretty much universal consensus from juniors and seniors, Miraidon and Calyrex Ice Rider, pretty darn powerful. Trick Room plus Glacial Lance with the Miraidon in the back to clean things up really makes for a strong duo.
Your world champion, but the first world champion to win in 2 different age groups. How does it feel to not only be the world champion, but to have a first like that, Kevin?
I have no words to describe it. It's an unreal feeling. I still can't believe it.
You were saying earlier that you were nervous. How did you calm those nerves?
I think after turn 1 of each game, where like I got my positioning up, I think I felt a lot better. And like even though sometimes if you're too nervous, it can hurt you. In my opinion, having at least a little bit of nerves can help you a lot.
I like that idea. Now, a lot of people are looking at you and being like, you're not only the world champion, you're a legend. I want to play just like you. What's your best piece of advice for a trainer who wants to be like you?
Whenever you get knocked down, don't give up at all. In the beginning, you know, my first win was like a bye in the tournament, and you know, I kept on pushing and pushing, and here I am today.
I love that advice. I'm going to take that advice for sure. Now, I know there are a lot of people who have helped you get here. Some of them are in the audience. Do you want to say hello or thank you to anyone?
I'd like to say a thank you to my whole family, all of my friends in Pokemon and in school, like everyone I've talked to and all my coaches, especially the person who helped me was Roxanne. I'd like to give a huge thank you to them and also to my brother.
Thank you so much for that support. Let's hear it one more time for Kevin Hahn. And we'll head back to you, casters.
And that's just so heartwarming to see that kind of thank you there. It really is. Every single one of these interviews, especially as we wrap up our week, and are just going to be filled with so much emotion and so much genuine, just thanks and gratitude for everyone around them who's helped them on their journey and, help that get them achieve that title of world champion.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting to be a world champion is such an accomplishment, but especially for these players, they've really highlighted that it's been a whole village that helps them to get to that point. They've had so much support from their friends and family, and it was really nice to see some of the behind-the-scenes thank yous for what got these players into the Hall of Fame of VGC now with their crowning accomplishments.
And in history, they will stay because, once you're a world champion, that title does not leave you. You are one forever. Of course, next year someone else can claim it, but that's additive. It's not ever going to be removed from you. This is an accomplishment that you will remember for a long time. And, one that every player that achieves it should cherish. And it is something that not very many people can say they are. So it is definitely something you can brag about a little as well. A very great weekend of Pokemon so far. But we're not done yet. We have the Masters division to round out our day of competition, and I'm super excited to get to break that down soon, hopefully for you guys.
Yeah, we're going to be moving pretty soon into that match, I believe, as soon as the players are ready. But it's a super explosive match. There's so many interesting things that could happen. We were talking a little bit before jumping onto this cast. I'm really interested to see these two really exceptional players with some very different teams from what we've been seeing from the juniors and seniors division.
Yeah, and both of the teams we got to see a little bit yesterday. Not only did they play and cut, that's just the benefit of viewing the Masters teams as well. We got to see the teams play out. We got to see two of the Brute Bonnet. I believe we mentioned before the cast, there's 8 of them, I believe, overall in the tournament, and 2 of them are in finals. That's 25% of the Brute Bonnets are in finals. That is a crazy statistic. Shimon, if you're watching, you hit the nail on the head there with the prediction. And his son, I guess, was just the perfect thing for this tournament. And I mean, being both players there, bringing it for finals, just amazing. We have the caster predictions here, just highlighting again how Shimano's how correct he was. Even walking Wake, I mean, in the other division, right? What was a correct pick, and Ho-Oh making it to day 2 as well. I do think Shimon was definitely the winner of the caster predictions.
I will say, if we're just using the seniors division finals, all of my picks did show up. So there's something, but yes, Simon just with some wonderful calls in Masters division and juniors division, being able to catch some things that were really unique and dominating performances. 100% of the Hoes in the tournament made top cut. There was just that one, and 25% of the Fruit Bonnets are in finals. That's so extraordinary to be able to see. So huge shout outs to Simon for being able to get those wonderful calls here.
Yeah, and I think it's so fun, the flexibility we talked about a little bit before. We're going to get to see so many different teams, even in the VG finals, right? We got to see Kyrex, even though Kyrex, Ice Rider, and the Miraidon won, right? That wasn't really something we got to feature a lot of yesterday. I feel like it was a lot more Sun and a lot more like Shadow Rider Zalmazenta. So to actually see that lose in finals is very surprising, at least for me personally. To see Kyrex Ice win on the other 2 divisions as well was genuinely surprising. And then we have over here, the Psychic Ghost types and the Koraidons and those kinds of teams. So to see the differences, but still similarities throughout each of the divisions is so cool and really goes to show how flexible this regulation maybe is, if you don't look at it at face value.
Yeah, I think it's one of the really interesting things. Every year we get 3 different test cases of what the metagame is really like. We get to see the juniors and the seniors and the Masters division. And it's so interesting to see how interesting and unique each of those divisions can be. There are so many different, totally, completely different strategies dominating in these different formats. It was Miraidon, and juniors and seniors, and we're guaranteed to be crowning a Koraidon in the Masters division, which those 2 Pokemon, sure, they're both fast dragon types, but they really couldn't be more different in terms of the compositions that they use with them and how they play.
And the supporting Pokemon that surround them as well, right? We talked about it a lot yesterday. The photosynthesis boost from important Pokemon like the Fluttermane, like the Brute Bonnet, really, really appreciate the Koraidon. And I'm sure we're going to break it down more when we get in a team preview. But a lot of even Geo's Pokemon, for example, like the Chi-Yu and the the Chi-Yu benefit from the sun and take advantage of it, even if they don't have photosynthesis. And even James has a lot of pieces similar to that on his team as well, which do have the photosynthesis like the Raging Bulls, but each team has a different way of approaching using the fact that the sun is up, and that's really cool. While you mentioned the parallel as well of the Miraidon using the electric terrain to maybe boost things like the Iron Hand, like we saw earlier today, and just giving the general terrain effect of not being able to go to sleep, threats like a Moongus.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see just like the different compositions that wind up working so well. It's very clear that Miraidon is an incredibly powerful component, but yeah, both of these players choosing that Koraidon, it really spreads out the benefits of these two players' teams. The Koraidons are really strong on their own, but pretty much every Pokemon on Geo's team and almost every Pokemon on James's team is really happy to be in the sun. Those fire-type moves getting powered up. At least two photosynthesis mons on each player's team. I guess we're sort of seeing a recipe here in terms of these two teams. You get a Ghost Psychic type, a Koraidon, a bunch of photosynthesis Pokemon, a ground type, Fire Dark type. And that's kind of the composition that we're seeing here.
And the cool thing as well is that you get to see the way that both players maybe approach it. Like you said, the Fire Dark type, there are a lot of those similarities, but maybe James valued Fake Out more and really likes that bulky Incineroar compared to maybe the offensive Scarf Chi-Yu. So the way that both players reached for it is really, really interesting there. But I do believe we are going to cut to a quick break as Masters gets ready to set up the true finale for Championship Sunday. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, trainers, to the final match of the day here on Championship Sunday at the Victory Road Side Game Stream Showcase. I'm Tyson Hughes, joined here by Hayden McTavish, and we're going to be covering the final match of Masters here at the World Championships in Anaheim. And I'm super excited to get to do it with you, Hayden. This game I've been looking forward to all weekend as we've been preparing for it, either behind the booth and watching the games all weekend. It's a pinnacle of the US of A, and we're going to get a USA of A finals, and it's fun in the sun. It's everything I could have asked for. I'm just excited to be here.
Yeah, we really couldn't have asked for two better players to be able to showcase. They've both said in their interviews from before that they're really feeling like they're playing good Pokemon, that they're really proud of their play so far. And I'm really excited to see just the celebration of all the effort that they've done to be able to get to this finals, as they're bringing two really innovative teams here to this matchup.
Yeah, and innovative for sure, right? These are the teams that you wouldn't normally see in this regulation at all. I think the juniors and seniors did a better job of actually exemplifying that, as the Shadow Rider and the Zamazenta and things like that, which we did see this weekend. They weren't, these teams aren't out of the blue, or the other teams were, very standard in their build as well. But I think what both of these trainers did a great job at doing is recognizing how strong Sun was. Both these trainers also sticking with what they have known, and that is Sun. James brought this to a great result in NAIC, and so did Giovanni. And both of them really refining it and bringing it to Worlds with full confidence just shows of how strong these Pokemon are and how strong the prep of each of these players are.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just the strength of Sun as an archetype, which I think has been really well demonstrated here, but the strength of familiarity. I think for a big tournament like the World Championships, it really helps to know the ins and outs of the strategy that you're going for. And James and Giovanni both capitalizing on an archetype that they have expertise with, that they've really been thinking through how to use to the best of its potential. I think that's the kind of thing that is so helpful, especially in all these matches where you have to play a lot of really high stakes games where things don't always go as expected, and having the experience to just adjust and know the capabilities of your team can show up so well and be really the difference between defeat and victory in so many of these thin margin matches that we see at the World Championships.
And being able to have that master over the team, I think, again, is what both these players have done an excellent job at doing. Really refining their teams throughout the season and NAIC. I know James hopped onto the Sun a little bit later, but again, brought it to NAIC to good success and decided, I guess, that it was good to continue to use. And I mean, look, it worked out for him. I know for a fact, though, that Giovanni has been using his team for the entirety of the regulation with maybe one or two minor tweaks, but really sticking it through with the Pokemon that he deemed to be the strongest in the format. And to make it to the World Championships for both of these players, to make it to finals, is a dream come true. I know for both of them. Giovanni, the first time making really a big run in this season, and James, a former world champion himself, trying to make that run in this new Masters division. And this story from both trainers really conflicting there and fighting for the title. Both, I know, really, really want it and are both deserving of it. But unfortunately, one of these trainers only is going to be able to walk away with the title today.
Yeah, absolutely. So much work that's all leading up to this specific moment. And these players have both had an entire day to think through exactly how they want to approach this matchup, knowing that it's so high stakes, being able to talk to friends, collaborators, try to figure out what their angles are into this matchup. And it's one of the things that makes, I think, even just being able to walk onto that final stage so exciting for players. It's a completely different game from what Pokemon normally is. You get to think through this really intense matchup. You know your team so well, you know your opponent's team pretty well, you have enough time to really plan things out. And just being able to go from that to really trying to figure out how to perform the best with an opponent who's also had all that time to prepare makes finals of big tournaments so special for me. And I'm really excited to be able to see these players' preparation pay off here in this matchup.
Yeah, and seeing all those efforts put together, not only in the builder, but in the gameplay themselves, like you said, just coming up with those and really executing on them is what Sunday is all about. And what these final games are going to be all about is which player can execute better and which game plan is more refined. Which player has truly reached the nitty and the gritty to get down in the mud and really refine what they have found and bring out every single aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be able to pivot pretty soon and jump over to that mainstream to see these players who have prepared so well jumping into things. We've Got a few more things to talk about for these two players, though, before we jump over to that main stage. I think something that's really interesting. Both of these players prioritized familiarity, but also showed exceptional foresight in the exact teams that they were going to bring. And we'll be able to talk about that a little more in just a moment.
Let's go, we've been waiting all year, and we're so ready for
We'll have a new US World Champion, but who's it going to be?
Time to give them what they came to see. Let's give them something to remember. We can give it all we got tonight. We're not going home.
Let's play some good Pokemon, but I'm gonna play better.
So let's put on a show. For your Masters Finals! Please welcome to the stage from the USA, James Evans! Hi, James. And also from the USA, please welcome Giovanni Siski! James, I saw you walking down that catwalk just going like this. How are you feeling?
It's just amazing. I'm honored to be a part of this for the first time ever in Pokemon VGC history. Pokemon competitive history. It just means a lot to me to be back here again, which is something not a lot of people can say. Although we just saw a senior do that, so it just means a lot to me, and I'm really excited for how this is going to go, win or lose.
That's still not a lot of people, absolutely. What about you, Giovanni? How does it feel to be standing on this arena stage right now?
It's a surreal experience. I've had so many people support me along this incredibly long journey that I've had to this point now, through all the ups and downs, and I'm incredibly grateful for all of you that have been there every step of the way for me, and I hope to put on a good show for you guys.
Just one more question for each of you. What do you think you need to do in this match in order to become the world champion? What do you think is your most important goal?
I think the tempo in this matchup actually will dictate a lot, so just watch out for that.
All right. James, he says watch out for that. What do you think your most important thing you're going to have to keep in mind for this match is?
Winning.
It's a good focus. All right, we can't wait to watch you play, so we'll have you take your seats. And there are some important special guests on the floor with Gabby. Let's check in with them.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm here with Kian and Kareem, who are supporting Gio and James. But you know, Kian, one of the time-honored traditions of a Video Game Masters finalist is preparing for the match. But I've heard that James and Gio went to dinner together last night, and you were there. So tell me, was that a tense meal?
It wasn't that tense. We're all really close friends. Everyone was just trying to enjoy it. Maybe after, but we all just try to enjoy the moment of two friends being in the finals together.
I'm glad that you were all able to share that moment. Now tell me a little bit about Gio's prep coming into the match today.
Yeah, we worked tirelessly overnight. We stayed up super late and then even worked a little bit before this to make sure that he was all prepared for this most important match of his life, to be honest.
Do you think he got enough sleep?
Oh, he most definitely got enough sleep. We worked hard for him so he could get his beauty sleep for today.
Awesome. All right, Kareem, what about James? Was he up to the wee hours of the morning practicing as well?
I know that James was practicing a lot with our friends Joe and Brady, and the three of them are all just excellent players, and I'm not sure how long they stayed up, but I know that Joe and Brady definitely put him through the ringer for testing for this match, and I'm very confident in all of their prep together.
Now, Kareem, you've mentioned that you've known James for a really long time and that having been on this stage yourself, this is a really big moment to be a part of for James. Do you have any words of advice or encouragement or anything you want to say to him before we get started with this match?
Really just that James has always been such an amazing, dedicated person. Anything he wants to get done, he gets done. He's very determined. And I have no doubt that this is going to be the same deal. I know how badly he wants this, and I have full faith that he's going to get it.
Thank you so much. Kian, do you have any words of advice, encouragement, anything you want to say to Gio before he starts this match?
It's hard to pick like one thing to say, but Gio's been using Koraidon since the beginning of Regulation G, when even then no one believed in it, and even up until now no one really believed in it as well. So just let Gio be Gio, use what he knows, and he'll do great.
All right, well, thank you both so much. I'll let you get seated to enjoy the match. Casters, back to you.
So exciting.
And already we haven't even had the post-game interview, but we can already feel the emotion, not only from the supporters and their friends and family, but, in the players themselves, those brief words, James just saying win and victory and things like that, just emphasizing how ready each of these players are for the game.
And we're going to be able to jump back into a quick snapshot of the teams and accomplishments. Both of these players, phenomenal players, not only getting to this stage, but being able to showcase a lot of previous accomplishments. But most importantly, I want to just point out, there's a clear recipe both of these teams follow. There's the Ghost Psychic type, the Koraidon, the Brute Bonnet, a Fire Dark, a Photosynthesis Pokemon, and a Ground type. And both of these players, through very different paths, have converged on this very powerful team archetype. And we're going to be able to have to see the decision being made here on which one is a little bit better than the other.
And this is going to be the final match of the day. The Masters Division, the true pinnacle of the VGC weekend. Giovanni Chisque and James Evans, both amazing competitors here. As you mentioned their results before, very decorated. Even Giovanni, who has just really come up this season, has really put a name for himself out there. And James, who has been around for what seems like forever, with countless results at this level, if not like NAIC and other, again, that senior world champion before. And both players really are fighting for this world champion title.
Yeah, there's definitely an important storyline to be thinking about here. James might be the first person to ever repeat a world championship from a younger division into that Masters division, which would be pretty phenomenal. There are very few players who have ever been able to do that. And so this is a pretty important moment in VGC history with that potential. But of course, Giovanni has been preparing so well, has really demonstrated expertise in this team. And so it's going to be tough for James to do that. And Giovanni wants this victory just as much.
But we're going to get a quick dive back into the teams before we get into the game. I'm sure both players already know, but for the viewers at home who might not or need a refresher, James Evans here is going to be rocking out with the Caldex Shadow Rider, Koraidon, Incineroar, Raging Bolt, Brute Bonnet, and the Landorus Incarnate form.
Yeah, so a couple of things really important to watch out for in this matchup. In particular, that Focus Sash on the Caldex Shadow Rider, super important for letting it get off more than just a single attack here. It has a ton of damage potential here, and that Focus Sash is going to be crucial with the very fast-paced offense on each side. The Koraidon has a Clear Amulet, not too useful against Giovanni's team, but pretty important if that Fluttermane wants to go for any Icy Winds. And then that Raging Bolt is the Pokemon holding the Assault Vest, which is going to be pretty crucial because there's so much special attacking damage coming out from Giovanni's side of the field, and not a lot of Pokemon that can take those special attacks other than that Raging Bolt.
Yeah, and a very impressive version of the Sun team from James here, with a lot more tools like the Raging Bolt and the Landorus to just immediately put your foot on the gas and get that damage on the board, but still having defensive options in the Photosynthesis on the Brute Bonnet as well as the Assault Vest. But taking a look at Giovanni's team here with the Lunala, Koraidon, Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, Brute Bonnet, and Ursaluna has a bit of a different approach to the Sun team.
Yeah. Absolutely in love with Giovanni's composition here. I think it's just extraordinary. There's so many different ways that Giovanni can pursue win conditions. I could see any of these Pokemon being super crucial for the finals. I really love how the Koraidon and Lunala aren't just strong in their own right, but really power up all of the other Pokemon on the field with either Sun or setting up Trick Room for that Ursaluna. And it really gives Giovanni a lot of flexibility here, if this goes to a 3-game set, to be able to really pivot up strategies And there's just so much that James has had to be anticipating here in terms of prep work and everything. So I think a really well-built team that Giovanni's super familiar with. I can't think of a stronger way to be entering into this matchup.
Yeah, and I think both players have a lot of different tools that maybe they're more familiar with to kind of make their way through this matchup. And it really is going to come down, as we talked about before, who has a better mastery of those tools and who has created the more refined game plans. We see each of the Pokemon of the teams there displayed on stage, very similar to the Naranja Academy there, displayed with all the types on the schoolyard arena. A great visual effect here to really showcase how important this World's Finals is. And again, it is a US only final. So this is the first time in, I believe, years for this to have happened, for that curse to have been broken for the US only finals.
Yeah, absolutely. The US has, I think, not been winning quite so many World Championships lately. And so being able to have these two players guaranteeing a win for that country is a really big deal, especially in this very historic tournament, the first time that it's ever been in an arena. Both players so honored already, even just to have made it here.
Yeah, and both players really deciding, in their prep, what for Pokemon am I going to bring to this game one? Which Pokemon are going to lead me to victory in the World Championships here? What game plans have I come up with really allow me to get the most out of my Pokemon and win in a decisive manner?
Absolutely. So many different ways that these players could lead, 15 different combinations on each potential side. So many of them are real possibilities, especially from Giovanni's side of the field. So these players have a moment as they're confirming their selections here to think through and review all the different options that they're going to have to be thinking about as soon as they jump into this game.
And I think that's the best part about each of these Sun teams is that they have so much flexibility. You mentioned the similarities, even in the Fire and Dark type, that being the Incineroar and the Chi-Yu. Each in their own have so much flexibility on how they can be used in the Beads of Ruin. When do you want it on the board? When do you want to boost up your Fluttermane or your Lunala? When do you want to bring in Incineroar to maybe get an Intimidate down on Giovanni's Koraidon? Or maybe a knockoff on a Lunala switch-in? Or even a knockoff onto an Ursaluna to remove the Flame Orb? There's so much flexibility in how each Pokemon can be used and when they should be used that it's really going to come down to how each of the trainers use it. But we're going to jump in to game one of Masters Finals here. James Evans leading off with the Incineroar and the Brute Bonnet, and Giovanni with the Chi-Yu and the Fluttermane.
So many dark types on the field here. Both players really wanting to respect the Ghost Psychic restricted on the other side of the field, but none of those restricteds from either side are going to be hitting the field yet. I've got a pretty good guess about what might be in the back for both players, but really interesting choice from James to be leading with that Brute Bonnet. It was so helpful for him in top 4, but it's looking like it might have a bit of a tough time here facing down specifically a Chi-Yu.
And I think with Chi-Yu and Fluttermane here, Giovanni is leaning into the more offensive part of his team. Being able to gain the speed and control off the bat is absolutely amazing for him. Even without the Sun, Fluttermane here is the fastest Pokemon on the field alongside Chi-Yu thanks to that Choice Scarf. So if either player wants to switch in Koraidon, for James to either get that photosynthesis boost or Giovanni to get his own, you really have to consider of what's on the field now. But James is going to go for a Terrestrialization, leading the game with a Terra Water on the Brute Bonnet, not wanting to take a super effective Moonblast or Heat Wave.
Yeah, very much a forced Terrestrialization on this first turn here, as Fake Out is going to go into the Chi-Yu, even though it could have Terrestrialized into the Ghost type. A huge call from James, as a Moonblast is going to fire off into that Brute Bonnet. Whoa, that Brute Bonnet has to be so happy at Terra. That would have been a KO otherwise. But that Spore going out on the Chi-Yu, that's a huge benefit for James. That Chi-Yu was poised to be doing a ton of damage throughout this game. It's one of Giovanni's key players, so getting sleep on that might even have been worth a Terrestrialization and half of Brute Bonnet's hit points.
And with it being Spored, though, I will say that James doesn't really have anything to immediately threaten. Now that the Chi-Yu is asleep, you can go for a knockoff with your Incineroar to remove that speed control from Giovanni's side, which could be potentially dangerous later at finishing off your Calyrex or Koraidon in the back for James. But getting to knock it off now would be an excellent choice if James does choose to opt into that. You did, like you said, have to trade half your Brute Bonnet HP there, and Moonblast did so much to you. Giovanni has the opportunity to go for another attack attack, but instead swaps out the Flutter Mane to preserve it and its Focus Sash for a Brute Bonnet of his own just to not get spored in that slot. And Sucker Punch there failing to remove the Focus Sash on the Flutter Mane as Chi-Yu takes its first turn of sleep here. Incineroar, though, getting to follow up with another attack, and it is going to be that knockoff to remove the Choice Scarf and that speed option for Giovanni.
Huge bit of progress there with the knockoff, but something that's really, really crucial here is that Giovanni has not terastallized his Brute Bonnet and is facing down a terastallized Brute Bonnet. So one of these Brute Bonnets can spore the other, and it sure isn't James's. So Giovanni in a really nice position, having chosen to drop one of his restricted options just in order to bring this Brute Bonnet. That's how important it is to this matchup. And it seems like it's in a pretty strong position here to be able to threaten a Spore into either slot, to be able to redirect a lot of damage. I really love that pick from Giovanni to bring that Pokemon.
And I think this is exactly what he wanted. Going for the Moonblast, knowing that it would have gotten the knockout if James didn't go for a Terastallization there, saying that if you want to put my Chi-Yu to sleep, you're going to have to burn a Terastallization. And now that my Brute Bonnet gets to come in, either your Incineroar or Brute Bonnet get to go to sleep. Chi-Yu, though, having to take another turn there, isn't going to get resported there. Chi-Yu's going to stay asleep, knock off there into the Brute Bonnet, removing the Citrus Berry from Giovanni. That form of healing is no longer available. A Spore into the Incineroar slot, though, putting it to sleep as well. And both of the Fire Dark types are asleep now in the field, but Chi-Yu significantly ahead, having burned 2 turns now. Brute Bonnet, though, on James's side, is slower than the Chi-Yu, so if it does wake up on this next turn, is going to have to answer to one of its attacks.
Yeah, so this Chi-Yu is in an exceptional position, having burned through a bunch of its sleep. If it can wake up this turn, it's got a nice ability to do a ton of damage into that Brute Bonnet slot. And it doesn't even have to worry about locking into an attack now that its Choice Scarf is gone. We're going to see the Brute Bonnet on Giovanni's side swap out. It's done its job. It's put that Incineroar to sleep. And Koraidon's going to hit the field, finally setting the sun for all of these Pokemon. So Giovanni has, in fact, chosen to drop the Lunala for this first game. It's paid off so far, quite well. But we'll have to see if it continues to do so as Incineroar burns a turn of sleep. And we'll have to see. Chi-Yu has a 50% chance to wake up here. Going to take a Sucker Punch from that Brute Bonnet first. But now if it wakes up, it's not going back. Oh, the Chi-Yu staying asleep the full 3 turns. Getting its beauty rest in, but really limiting the damage output from Giovanni this round.
Yeah, luckily, though, that Sucker Punch doesn't look like it's going to be able to knock out the Chi-Yu next turn, unless, of course, this Incineroar goes for a helping hand to boost up the damage if James deems it important to get rid of this Chi-Yu as soon as possible. With a full HP Koraidon, though, on the field for Geo, this is looking very, very dangerous for the opposing Incineroar on James' side. Of course, you can redirect now with the Terra Water on the Brute Bonnet as well as the Photosynthesis defense boost. Can redirect maybe one attack from this Koraidon, but I'm not sure how much I would count on it with the Life Orb on Giovanni's Koraidon boosting the damage to the maximum.
Something that's really tough for Giovanni here, though. We'll have to see first. The Incineroar does wake up on a first turn. This Incineroar waking up so much faster than the Chi-Yu. Going to be able to helping hand that Sucker Punch. So Brute Bonnet is going to be able to finish off that Chi-Yu. So unlucky for Giovanni. That's a key player down. And this Koraidon gets a chance to fire back. But if it's that close combat, it's going to have a bit of a drawback. So Giovanni not taking any KOs, just trying to set up that Flame Charge so you're faster for the Pokemon in the back. But that's so huge. The Fire Dark type on James's side just burning through sleep so much more quickly and really putting James in a commanding bit of positional advantage here at the start.
Unfortunately, having to take the Life Orb chip as well as the Rocky Helmet means that Koraidon is slowly ticking down its HP already as Giovanni swaps in his own Brute Bonnet. Hopefully, you can put one of these Pokemon on James' side back to sleep, but losing your Chi-Yu this early is going to be very, very dangerous. You don't really have a way around the Calyrex Shadow Rider that is most likely in the back for James, and you really have to rely on the Flutter Mane and for Sun to be up to really have a way around it. But Gio's not out of the game yet. You still have a Koraidon on the field, as I mentioned before, to threaten super effective damage into this Incineroar and do a decent chunk to the Brute Bonnet. It really comes down to, I think, what Giovanni wants to Spore here and put to sleep for the future rounds or future turns of the game.
There's also a really important question that I believe I missed in the beginning, which is which Brute Bonnet is faster if there's a speed tie there. Because it might be the case that Giovanni's safest move is just to be Rage Powdering to try to redirect any potential spores from the other Brute Bonnet. But James doesn't want to play that game. Pretty happy to swap out this Brute Bonnet and preserve redirection later. Sending out that Calyrex that you just mentioned is now going to be a pretty big threat now that the Chi-Yu is gone. So we have to see what attacks are going out. If that Calyrex just switched in on close combat, that's going to be a huge amount of progress, and James gets the read! That's Calyrex Shadow Rider going down, not taking any damage at all. A parting shot firing off into the Brute Bonnet, just repositioning a little bit from James, but that's no damage out, although looks like that Brute Bonnet went for a Spore. Going to be pretty happy to hit any target here.
The Incineroar notably here being faster than the Brute Bonnet as well. So this Incineroar is going to have to be careful of what it swaps into. Because your Brute Bonnet is Terastallized, you have no safe swap into the Spore anymore. So whatever comes in here has the chance of getting Spored, and James has to make that decision. A very real play that Giovanni could have made was doubling that Brute Bonnet with a close combat and a Spore. So this Calyrex isn't out of the woods yet. Yes, you avoid damage, but if a Spore comes into that slot or the partner, that could still be bad if those sleep turns add up. But James getting to swap in the Calyrex for essentially free there without taking damage from that close combat is very big. Brute Bonnet being the Pokemon to come back in for James is going to be great to redirect any attacks from this Koraidon in the future, but a Spore goes into that Incineroar slot, which is now the Brute Bonnet, and it's going to go to sleep.
So a nice bit of progress from Giovanni to be able to put that Brute Bonnet to sleep. No more redirection, but definitely not the slot that I think Giovanni would have wanted that Spore to go into. The Calyrex Shadow Rider is now in a pretty interesting position here because it still has Protect available, can try to allow an Incineroar to swap back in and reduce damage. It does have to worry a fair bit about the potential for a double up from this now speed boosted Koraidon and a Sucker Punch from that Brute Bonnet. So this Calyrex Shadow Rider still under a lot of risk, but James definitely got out of that turn about as well as he could have, not taking a sleep onto a core key restricted Pokemon.
Yeah, and exactly like you said, a double up is a very real possibility for Geo. Sporing either slot works out in your favor because you either put the Calyrex to sleep or you remove the option to Rage Powder. We see a Terastallization though, Terra Fire there on the Koraidon. Boost up its fire type moves to the max, and in the sun as well, these are going to pack a punch. A Protect into the Calyrex, though, is not going to give Giovanni an option to attack. Brute Bonnet burning a turn of sleep here to maybe redirect an attack later in the game. As close combat goes into it, finishes off the Brute Bonnet. No more option of Rage Powder for James here as that Pokemon is removed. And no Sucker Punch, notably from Giovanni as well, leads them to believe that this is a potential Spore into the Calyrex.
That's a really beautiful play from Giovanni. It works out well with the read being made. The Calyrex had a lot of pressure on it to protect, but it also covered so many other options. Even if that Calyrex Shadow Rider had attacked, it probably would have gone to sleep right after. There was also the potential, depending on where that Spore was targeted, to try to catch a switch in there. I really love the way that Giovanni's been playing this. Maybe hoping to have caught that Incineroar on a switch in rather than just the Brute Bonnet staying asleep. But still, I think Giovanni's being really proactive about trying to make the most out of these positions here.
Yeah, and Koraidon here being the last Pokemon for James, both restricteds here on the field and at full HP, are looking amazingly positioned to deal with the rest of Giovanni's team here. You do have to be careful, though, that with the Life Orb on Giovanni's side, and the fact that it has a +1 to its speed, it's guaranteed to outspeed both the James' Pokemon here. So in combination with the Sucker Punch, can be doing damage to the Calyrex or even into the Koraidon. I wouldn't count them out either. And with the defense boost as well, you have to be careful if you can even knock out the Brute Bonnet this turn. You have, without Terastallization on the Koraidon, the only move that you'd have stab on is the Collision Course in that fighting move. So you have to be very, very careful if you are James what you walk into. But Koraidon here is going to swap out for Giovanni and is going to go into the Flutter Mane, maybe expecting a fighting type move from James's side.
I think there's just a lot of risk with attacking with that Koraidon there. Either Restricted could play defensively, like that Calyrex pivoting out into the Incineroar, trying to set up Intimidate, and at -1 defense, that Koraidon, even though it had the speed boost, was just in a really vulnerable situation. I really like the option instead to pivot into the Flutter Mane, preserve Sun for later, preserve Koraidon for later. We'll have to see what this Brute Bonnet can do. Just going to be a Sucker Punch trying to cover that Calyrex Shadow Rider option. And the Koraidon going for a Collision Course and getting the targeting right. That's a ton of damage into this Brute Bonnet. That's just a KO with the boost from Collision Course from the Sun activating or a Calcium Pulse, and also the extra power from the super effective fighting type attack, given that it was a Collision Course. That's huge progress for James. Although Giovanni now gets to set up that Sun once more for a Flutter Mane that is probably pretty happy to be looking at a Koraidon that can't terrestrialize out of the 4x fairy weakness.
And this is actually a deceptively really good positioning here for Giovanni, because now that Koraidon has come in, it's no longer intimidated. All you have to do is go for a double protect to block a fake out and attack from the Koraidon here to preserve your focus hash and make sure no damage befalls your Pokemon. And then next turn, you can Moonblast the Koraidon with no potential of terrestrialization and Collision Course into the Incineroar. Yes, a Calyrex Shadow could come in, but the damage would have been done. And this is looking in favor of both trainers still. I mean, James still has flexibility here. The Incineroar is very healthy, and so is the Koraidon. But without terrestrialization, I think this is either player's game.
I think one of the really key factors here, though, is that the focus sash is still intact on that Calyrex Shadow Rider. So if it can come in on a close combat here, then it maybe has some options to still be really threatening and demanding a lot of attention from Giovanni. So we're going to see Incineroar trying to capitalize on maybe a double protect, like you were mentioning Giovanni's tempted to do, trying to pivot in that Calyrex, allow for fake out pressure later. If this Calyrex comes in on a fighting type attack and takes no damage, that focus sash could be really impactful for the rest of this set. But the Moonblast going off into the on no protect from James, trying to preserve it for the next turn, and that's a KO from Giovanni. That Flutter Mane putting in so much work, and there's just 2 Pokemon, and the Flame Charge! A perfect read from Giovanni! He knew that he maybe could consider that protect on the fake out, but instead, just perfectly calling the Calyrex switch in, and now there's a 1 HP Calyrex facing down a speed boosted Koraidon and a speed boosted Flutter Mane, and there's no amount of fake outs in the world that can keep that poor restricted Calyrex Shadow Rider safe.
Yeah, and to be able to attack that Calyrex and break that focus dash that you were highlighting is absolutely amazing. Now, with a Flutter Mane there, with its focus dash still intact and the sun still on the field, you are able to just keep your position here and solidify this game 1.
That was so incredibly played from Giovanni. No really flashy reads or anything from Giovanni until this point, I don't believe. Just trying to save things up and time exactly when a prediction happened so that it could be really completely game deciding. That worked out so well from Giovanni. It was a really good heads-up play from James to try to go for that. It really was going to put him back into the game, but Giovanni just called it perfectly. We're going to see Calyrex go for Protect, but not really too much that James can do here since close combat is a KO with that Life Orb boost nearly offsetting the Intimidate. And that's going to be just one poor 1 HP Calyrex Shadow Rider trying to face down the world, and that's going to be bringing us to game 2. Giovanni with a really convincing way of taking a lead at exactly the right moment to be able to win this first game.
And from what looked like a disadvantageous spot as well, to see you getting to do absolutely nothing that game. I guess that's what Gio's known for now, is coming back from these disadvantageous spots where the Chiyu takes a 30-turn sleep. It gets knocked out from a surprise turn 1 wake up from the Incineroar Helping Hand Sucker Punch, but is able to come back and reposition his way to a game 1 win.
Gio just playing phenomenally, befitting for the stage that he is playing on right now. I think that's just been such a hallmark of his play lately. This Chiyu is such a volatile Pokemon. It can be so powerful, but it has so many inaccurate moves. It's had a lot of really tough luck with sleep turns throughout this tournament, but I think Giovanni's really showcasing how helpful familiarity can be. This Chiyu would have been able to improve the game state so much, but it didn't really need to do so much. It demanded enough attention from James that the rest of the Pokemon were able to handle it. Sure, it went down without really getting attacks off, but that was so much time that James spent just taking care of the one Pokemon. And Giovanni just so well experienced with the team, even with the close combat into that Calyrex Shadow Rider. James got that read once, but not twice. And Giovanni just needed that one good play to pull him into convincingly winning this game.
I think as well, the Chiyu provided a lot of value even for falling asleep, was able to provide that Beat of Ruin, which otherwise I don't think would have done that much to the Brute Bonnet, even with the Terrestrialization. So leading off with that Flutter Mane and the Chiyu just allows you to assert so much pressure onto James's side that even things like the Assault Vest Raging Bolt and the Terrestrialization on the Brute Bonnet, you take so much damage from a Moonblast with the Beads of Ruin on the field that even with Terrestrialization, you have to spend it just so you don't get O-code from that Moonblast. And even if you do get the 3-turn sleep like we saw, it's still, in Gio's favor as long as he can position his Pokemon.
That Chiyu, I think, took 4 attacks that game. It didn't get to attack, but it just demanded so much attention. It took the Fake Out, took the Knockoff, it took the Spore, it took 2 Sucker Punches plus a Helping Hand. James just had to spend so much time doing anything with that. And I think it really speaks to how powerful that Chi-Yu Flutter Mane lead is. We see it so often in non-restricted formats as just a really powerful mode for teams. And it's one of the real hallmarks of Giovanni's team that he's able to fit that powerful combination in while having so many other really important factors that it's really hard for James to lock in on countering just this one powerful lead. Because there's so much else he has to worry about. He has to worry about a Trick Room mode with Lunala and Ursaluna. He has to worry about that Brute Bonnet starting out. It's really tough for James to be able to adjust to this lead without then becoming vulnerable to something else.
Yeah, and I think it's really on James to adapt here in this game too, of maybe what Giovanni wants to do in this game. And if, you know, he commits the same game plan, how is James going to respond to that? And if Gio switches it up to an adjustment in game 2, how is James going to respond to that as well? So being down a game here really is on James to maybe adjust. And maybe something like that Raging Bolt we could see. You know, we just talked about how important that Moon Blast is from that Chi-Yu and Flutter combination. But if Raging Bolt has that Assault Vest, maybe with Terastallization, you're able to threaten a little bit more pressure with that Terra Electric as well. Those Thunderclaps can start to hurt, and maybe if you take advantage of the Beads of Ruin as well, that can do quite a bit of damage to Giovanni's team if positioned correctly. Of course, you do have to still worry about the other threats on the team, like the Koraidon for Giovanni, but let's hop into game 2 here. Giovanni's going to stick with the Chi-Yu and the Flutter Mane, and James with the same lead as well, the Incineroar and the Brute Bonnet.
So really interesting. James knows that last game didn't turn out perfectly, but maybe has a few tricks up his sleeve for this time around. Going to try to come up with a different way around this particular lead matchup. That Chi-Yu still putting out just as much pressure as last time, and pretty crucially, even with James Evans' last play on turn 1, there's still a ton of risk for even trying to fake out that Chi-Yu, because if Giovanni wants to go for something cheeky and terastallize the Chi-Yu, that's always an option, and it would let it get out a bunch of additional damage on this first turn.
Absolutely. And I think, though, we do see a Terastallization here, or actually no Terastallization, just a Sucker Punch into the Flutter Mane, just forfeiting a Dark Pulse there into the Brute Bonnet just to have a little bit of chip damage, and a Moonblast double up into it to get the knockout there on the Brute Bonnet. A huge nuisance in game 1. Gio has removed now no more Spore or Rage Powder for James, but notably has removed saved the Terastallization on James' side. Knockoff there going to remove the Choice Scarf for Chi-Yu though, so only one form of speed control left here, and that's the Flutter Mane. But with Sun not up on the field, whatever comes in here for James, like the Shadow Rider, can be doing devastating damage to the field. And with a helping hand and the range that this Chi-Yu is at, I could see James getting a double knockout here if possible.
Yeah, that was a really spectacular way for James to play this first turn. Just spreading out the damage a little bit, trying to set up some of these board states that Calyrex Shadow Rider is so well known for exploiting. I think especially too with the Chi-Yu sitting on the field, there's not exactly an easy way to just swap out that Flutter Mane, because the Beads of Ruin is going to make that Calyrex Shadow Rider do even more damage. And without the Sun, this Flutter Mane is solidly slower than the Calyrex Shadow Rider. So Giovanni has two Pokemon that are normally really good at handling the Calyrex Shadow Rider, but both of them are now underspeeding it thanks to the way that James has set up this board position. And there's just a ton of pressure here forcing a switch from Giovanni.
And we do see a swap there into the Brute Bonnet to take this resistant hit a lot better. But even with the Beats of Ruin here, it's going to have to take a lot. A Protect there from the Calyrex, though, giving the Chi-Yu another chance to fire off an attack. Snarl there being the move of choice to fire off. Going to not be doing too much to this Incineroar here, unfortunately. And that allows this Incineroar to go for another attack. And it's just going to be the parting shot here instead, maybe into the last Pokemon here for James. If it's the same game plan as last, then it's going to be that Koraidon to set the sun up here for both trainers. And the Chi-Yu, without the helping hand here on the field, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get the knockout there on the Chi-Yu unless you double up. But Giovanni has done a great job at bringing in the Brute Bonnet here to redirect any of those potential attacks that James wants to throw out from the Koraidon.
Yeah, a really interesting way of playing this second turn. I think it's really cool for James to be able to try to reposition and have a little bit more offensive pressure, but maybe not expecting that Brute Bonnet to come in. It would have taken a fair bit of damage from that Beads of Ruin boosted Astro Barrage. But yeah, Giovanni positioning so spectacularly well. The thing is, there's just a lot of damage that can come out from James' side of the field, and there's not necessarily a need to attack with this Calyrex Shadow Rider. There's a relatively safe switch in to that Incineroar while the Koraidon is threatening a lot of damage. It might be the case that Giovanni needs to be thinking a little bit carefully about how to make it through this turn while optimizing the amount of damage that he's receiving, just because James still has a few defensive plays and a Koraidon in pretty good position to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, and the Koraidon is definitely posed with Terastallization here as well. As we see it fire off here for James. Terastallization, though, into the Koraidon, again, giving it the chance to actually not drop to that Moonblast last time. As we saw in game 1. With Terrifier as well, going to be able to do even more with this fire moves. Giovanni going for a Terastallization of his own. I were to guess this is into the Brute Bonnet to not take as much super effective damage as possible. The trade-off, though, is that you are going to have to take neutral from this Astral Barrage, and with Beads of Ruin active on the field, this is going to be very dangerous. As we see, yeah, it fire off, and no Sucker Punch, no Rage Powder from this Brute Bonnet. It's going to come down to James what slot he targets. It's the Flame Charge going to be into that Chiyu, able to get the knockout, but that leads me to believe that Giovanni's going for a Spore here. Which slot is this going to be?
This is such an impactful turn. This Spore really sets the pace for the rest of the match. It looks like it's going to be that Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is going to sleep, which is, I think, a great call. That Focus Sash was going to make it really difficult going forwards. But with the Koraidon Terastallized and with a speed boost up, it's going to be really difficult for Giovanni to handle it immediately. The Flutter Mane, when it comes in, will just be the same speed as the Koraidon, and the Koraidon, if it comes in, is just going to have to really deal with a ton of damage output from that other side.
Yeah, and that Flame Charge was really, really nice from James to guarantee that you are faster here in this game too. Then the then the Koraidon, if Giovanni decides to switch in here, as we see. But it seems like it's the correct choice here. You just need to get damage on the board or a Flame Charge of your own potentially to play around in the late game. Incineroar in the back for James, though, can swap in if it wants to maybe try to weave in a Fake Out, but that's easier said than done when you're staring down a Koraidon with Life Orb and Close Combat.
There's also a really interesting mechanic here where if the Calyrex Shadow Rider tries to switch out because it's asleep to set up that Incineroar, that Brute Bonnet is no longer going to be unable to eat its Citrus Berry, and it's suddenly going to heal up to a range where with the Photosynthesis defense boost, maybe it's actually able to redirect some of those attacks from the Koraidon. So there's a really interesting sort of pseudo pin there with the item on the Brute Bonnet, as we see just a defensive play from the Koraidon, maybe trying to burn a turn of sleep from the Calyrex Shadow Rider.
As we see, yeah, burning that first turn of sleep. Close Combat going to go into the Calyrex, calling an Incineroar swap potentially, and a Spore there into the Koraidon. Really committing, like you said, to maybe that Calyrex Shadow Rider swapping out because, you know, recognizing that Sucker Punch can still go off into the sleeping Pokemon, as well as an attack from the Koraidon could spell the end of the game for James. So Giovanni playing a little bit around that possibility, but unfortunately not getting that turn correct. Still keeps James in this game. And burning a turn of sleep on Calyrex means it can wake up on this next turn, which is definitely not what Giovanni wants to see happen. The Koraidon, though, can't go for Protect this following turn, so we see a Collision Course, though, come out from James's Koraidon.
That's a ton of damage! But so much still, but the Calyrex stays asleep. So we're okay here for Giovanni's side. The Flame Charge is going to be able to go out and break the Focus Sash, and the Brute Bonnet is going to be able to maybe put that Koraidon slot to sleep.
Yeah, and it is able to get the Spore there onto the Koraidon. It is going to come down to if this Calyrex can wake up. Because if not, Giovanni is going to be able to double the slot and get rid of whatever comes in, whether that be the Incineroar or if the Calyrex stays in. The Koraidon now, having being the fastest thing on the field, has to burn its turn of sleep, and we're going to get to see which Koraidon is faster now that they are both Flame Charge boosted. Remember as well that there's a Flutter Mane in the back for Giovanni.
Yeah, that Flutter Mane is so huge to be able to have as an option here, as well as the Brute Bonnet putting down so much Spore pressure, so it's really difficult even to switch in that Incineroar. The one factor to keep in mind, I think, is that when that Incineroar pivots in, it does have that Rocky Helmet item, so it's going to be able to do a little bit of damage to that Koraidon. So Koraidon has to be just a little bit careful about its targeting here. Not too careful, but maybe thinking through things a little bit. But the Calyrex wakes up. As you mentioned, that could be pretty detrimental if the targeting is going in there. It goes for the Protect.
Collision, Close Combat go again in the Koraidon, not able to pick up a knockout even with that Life Orb there. The Brute Bonnet, what's it going to go for? Is going to be that Spore covering for an Incineroar swap on the Calyrex slot, but I can't stress enough how important that Calyrex waking up is. The Crydon, though, is asleep. The sunlight fades, and that's going to be the photosynthesis removed on the Brubonnet, and a lack of damage removed from both the Crydons as well as the Orakai Compulse is going to be removed from both of them as well.
Maybe not too impactful at this point with Pokemon looking pretty low in health, but it does actually, I think, mean the Koraidon might need to think about going for a Flare Blitz to finish off the Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is pretty risky because that sets up a little bit more recoil plus that Rocky Helmet. So the targeting's gotten a little bit confusing for Giovanni's side. At the same time, though, pretty much all the restricteds are comfortably in range of Brute Bonnet Sucker Punches, so I think Brute Bonnet's pretty happy to be sitting on the field in this particular board state.
Yeah, and I think with Koraidon having to sleep here too, Giovanni really has to decide which slot comes in. We see a swap from the Calyrex there into the Incineroar. Does Giovanni get the slot correct again? Citrus Berry finally getting to be eaten as well with the Unnerve being removed from the field. That's going to be huge healing. Incineroar comes in. Which is the Incineroar Koraidon on James' side going to wake up? Let's find out after this Intimidate there. Koraidon does wake up. For James is going to go for Protect. Giovanni doesn't look too pleased. Which slot is his Koraidon targeting into? Sucker Punch fails there. And the Koraidon goes for close combat into James's slot there. So not calling and playing it safe.
Giovanni really frustrated there because that might have been just a game-changing result. If that Koraidon had stayed asleep and there had been a KO there, then James is down to his last two Pokemon, doesn't have the option to pivot Incineroar or anything, but now it looks like all the sleep is gone from James's side of the field, and with that fake out pressure from the Incineroar, and no ability to protect from the Brute Bonnet, no ability to avoid those fake outs, James is in a pretty nice position here. If he can go for some fake outs, try to do a little bit of damage, maybe win a speed tie. Definitely things are a little more volatile from a position that had been really favoring Giovanni before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is still playable from both sides with the HP ticking down for both players. It's looking very, very close as we see a Protect there from Giovanni's side. Let's see what this Incineroar decides to do. It's going to be the fake out into the Brute Bonnet instead of the Koraidon, and a Flame Charge going off into that Protect. I still don't think we've gotten to see which Koraidon has moved faster between all the Protects and such. I don't know which Koraidon is going to move faster here. And it's really going to come down to just that, is whatever Koraidon moves faster is going to get to attack first and take the first KO.
Brute Bonnet actually might get to move first in this particular matchup because that Sucker Punch pressure onto the Koraidon is really huge. There's an option just to go for a Sucker Punch into Koraidon and try to take out that Incineroar or do a bunch of damage to it with a close combat. The risk is that the Calyrex Shadow Rider could just switch in and then allow the Incineroar to pivot around, but there's a few options I think that Geo has. That Brute Bonnet sitting pretty at over half hit points definitely gives it a lot of options into these two Pokemon at least.
Absolutely, and with the HP and timer ticking down, we see Giovanni swap out the Koraidon, forfeiting that Flame Charge boost into the Flutter Mane. And this leads me to believe that maybe this is a Sucker Punch there from the Brute Bonnet, but instead we're going to see a Protect from James first and foremost. What's it going to be? Oh, no Sucker Punch knockoff, though, into the Flutter Mane. If this is a Spore, though, into the Incineroar, this is absolutely huge.
We'll have to see what the Brute Bonnet goes for. Amazing! That's so good for Giovanni, being able to put the Incineroar to sleep, setting things up so that this Koraidon is free and clear to reset the sun for itself and have quite a bit of time to start attacking again. Sure, it lost a Flame Charge boost, but it's still got a lot of damage here. The only challenge is it's so low on hit points that getting through that Incineroar might wind up being just a little bit challenging.
Absolutely here, and I think a huge turn of momentum, though, getting that Incineroar to sleep means it's not going to be able to go for something like that knockoff that we saw that previous turn on the Flutter Mane. The Koraidon near here now has to choose to Protect once again in front of the Sucker Punch Brute Bonnet, which would otherwise knock it out. Koraidon here resetting the sun as well is super important as we see the Protect there fail there for James, and a Rage Powder come out from Giovanni, redirecting any potential attacks. Koraidon, though, what's it going to go for? Flame Charge there into the Koraidon.
That's so huge. This Koraidon now speed boosted up, ready to handle that Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back. That lost double protect really cost James a lot of time for being able to have this Incineroar wake up. But with the Life Orb tick, that's going to take this Koraidon pretty low now. this Koraidon has exactly one more attack left in it, and it has to pick which of the Calyrex Shadow Rider or Incineroar to go for. This is a bit of an interesting situation. I think Giovanni has it locked with a close combat into the Incineroar and some Brute Bonnet magic to handle the Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it's a bit funky because that Calyrex Shadow Rider has Encore. There's not an easy Sucker Punch endgame or anything with the Brute Bonnet.
Yeah, not only do you have to worry about Sucker Punch, you have to worry about Spore, and like you said, that Encore. Sucker Punch only has so much PP, and you really have to find a position to get either a Spore or a Sucker Punch, so that mind game is a very real possibility. Yes, the close combat in the Incineroar is very obvious, but you are going to drop your Life Orb recoil, and removing that chance is to guarantee the endgame. So do you want to risk the Incineroar staying asleep and just try getting into the Calyrex? Do you want to potentially go for the Sucker Punch on the close combat and just try to play the PP stall games? It's really going to come down to the end game here. Koraidon goes for the Protect, though.
I think that's huge because this Brute Bonnet really needs to get a Spore off into the Calyrex Shadow Rider. But the Calyrex Shadow Rider making an amazing call. That was such high risk, but just going for the Encore, I think locking things in now because this Brute Bonnet has to go for Rage Powder. And I think that might put Giovanni in a really tough spot here because this Brute Bonnet can't go for attacks anymore. The Koraidon can only take out one of these two Pokemon, and Incineroar can probably beat that Brute Bonnet in the end game. So I think Giovanni, I don't know that he has anything more. He might have to be starting to think about a game 3.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a close end game, and to make a Protect on that turn is very, very interesting there to maybe play around the fact that the Calyrex, can get rid of you and just kind of end the game there. But having to Protect there and playing around the potential Protect from James' side as well is so interesting to me as well. The Brute Bonnet not going for the Sucker Punch that turn also means that it has to be Encore into that Rage Powder, as we see, it go for it this turn, forcibly so. The Koraidon, though, is going to go for an attack. It's going to be that close combat, and I think what Giovanni is relying on here is that it's able to live a single target Astral Barrage, and, if you're able to break out of that Encore, then maybe you can get a Sucker Punch, but unfortunately, this is looking like a Game 2 victory for James Evans here.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a really phenomenal Encore play. I think that was such a tough position that last time, but James really did a good job of identifying what he needed to do to win this set, as Astral Barrage single target is enough to take down that Brute Bonnet. So that's actually, this endgame was so interesting, and I want to take a quick second to break it down. That Koraidon had to Protect, because if it went for any attacks, it would have fainted and made that Astral Barrage single target. And unless you're going to lock in that Sucker Punch on that turn to try to stop that Calyrex Shadow Rider from going for an Astral Barrage, your Brute Bonnet is going to faint immediately. So there's just so much that Giovanni had to think about there, and James really identified exactly the weakness of that Koraidon's limited number of attacks and landed an Encore that I think just about guaranteed the game win there. That was such phenomenal endgame play from James, really showing why he is at the stage that he's at.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, too, is that the small things really do add up in this game, right? We saw the Koraidon get 1 or 2 attacks into the Incineroar when James swapped it in. Even if the Intimidates didn't really matter that much, and, Giovanni was able to attack in a certain slots and get the damage that he needed, that Rocky Helmet chip is what added up and allowed James to get the Koraidon even in a position to get dropped to the Life Orb recoil. So having the heads-up recognition of using the Incineroar in that way, even in a matchup where it's taking so much damage from the close combats, getting put to sleep, getting so much damage from the Moonblast. It's such a pivotal Pokemon, and why it's the king of VGC.
Yeah, it put in so much work this game, especially landing that knockoff too on the Fluttermane, and then setting up this endgame against the Brute Bonnet. I do want to take a second to shout out, though, the play Gio made on that last turn, I think, was the only way to salvage the Calyrex Shadow Rider going for the Astral Barrage. So, both players are thinking so carefully about this endgame. There's so much thought going into this, and both players are really trying to bring this down to the wire. We have a Game 3 in a stadium for the 2025 Pokemon Video Game World Championships. Both players are playing at the peak of their ability, but the onus is really on Giovanni to adjust and find a way around that Incineroar. It turns out that Chi-Yu Fluttermane lead is a little bit riskier than he was thinking because of the play James came up with in that last lead. So the question really is on how Giovanni adjusts.
Yeah, and this is a very close game because it really comes down to which Koraidon gets the flame charge first, right? Getting that guaranteed speed either in front of the Geo's, Chi-Yu or the Fluttermane tying with it or his own Koraidon, being able to outspeed those with your flame charge is very, very important. And the same thing for Giovanni, right? Maintaining that Choice Scarf on the Chi-Yu as well as getting the Fluttermane under that Sun Boost is so, so important. And really, speed is the name of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think something that's really interesting is speed is the name of the game for the 4 Pokemon that each player's brought. But they do have a couple of options that are really meaningful potential switch-ins. We talked about the Raging Bolt maybe as an adjustment from James. Giovanni certainly could be bringing either or both of the Lunala and the Ursaluna. And so I think it's interesting to see if both players just run it back with the same. That's sort of probably what we're expecting to see. But there's a ton of potential for adjustment. That means if one player is trying to play to this fast end game, that then it winds up totally being flipped on its head with a different way of playing.
But we see the same leads from both players there. Giovanni leading off with the Fluttermane and the Chi-Yu, and Incineroar and Brute Bonnet. Both of these players' last chance and last game to become a world champion.
This is so intense. We've seen both players use this lead to get a convincing game up, and now it's just a question of how the targeting is going to play out. James showed us last time that a Sucker Punch and a nice knockoff really sets him up well to bring in the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and so I'm really curious to see if Giovanni adjusts, and if so, how.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see if Giovanni sticks to the same game plan, but we're going to see a swap from the Chi-Yu there to prevent a fake out or knockoff into the Brute Bonnet. And Giovanni is okay with forfeiting a Citrus Berry, which makes a lot of sense in this matchup, as something like, the Unnerve could come on the field, and a Protect from Fluttermane as well to protect from any damage. A very defensive play. Fake out there, going off into the Brute Bonnet instead of knockoff and Sucker Punch failing.
Interesting. So a very neutral turn here, but Giovanni burning the fake out turn and now setting up a Brute Bonnet mirror with the Fluttermane still in prime position. The really interesting question, though, as you pointed out in Game 1, Tyson, was Beads of Ruin necessary for Moonblast to KO this Brute Bonnet without the Terastallization? Because if so, then that might mean this Fluttermane has to Stellar Terastallize to be able to get the KO, or live with not getting that KO. And so that makes some really interesting questions for Giovanni about where and how the offense comes in this particular game.
And I think the benefit of this turn is that the Brute Bonnet can't Rage Powder away. Either side can't Rage Powder away the Spore. So both players are able to go for a Spore. If you expect to live that Moonblast there, then you can get a Spore into the Fluttermane if you're okay with your Incineroar going to sleep as well. But a Terastallization here from one of the players, and that's going to be the Fluttermane. That's stellar Terastallization. Without the Beads of Ruin, you don't need it. You have Terra on your Fluttermane to boost up that damage even more. And that means that this Moonblast, without Terastallization on James's side, is going to be able to get a one-hit knockout on the Brute Bonnet, meaning no more Spore for James's end. And this Incineroar is going to have to go to sleep. But a knockoff is going to come out first and remove that Citrus Berry.
No targeting at all into the Fluttermane slot. It got that KO completely for free. No Sucker Punch, no anything. And this Fluttermane has to be so happy it's staring down a sleeping Incineroar. It just got the KO. That is why Giovanni brought it. And that Koraidon can't exactly come out because it's going to be setting up a nice speed boost for that Fluttermane. And even if the Calyrex Shadow Rider comes out, the Focus Sash is still intact. So James profoundly on the back foot after that turn. What a perfect use of Stellar Terra.
Yeah, absolutely as well. And don't forget, you still have the option of boosting up that Shadow Ball damage as well with the Fluttermane. And with James having to switch in the Koraidon here means the Fluttermane is going to get that speed boost and the Brute Bonnet that defense boost. The Incineroar being asleep as well means it's going to have to take whatever attacks Giovanni throws its way. And Brute Bonnet being at the HP it's at as well, might have to take a collision course super effectively from this Koraidon. But of course, if James wants to attack with the Koraidon, then it has to take damage as well. I think the big thing is that the Sucker Punch from the Brute Bonnet on James' side didn't go out into the Fluttermane, so this Focus Sash is still intact. And that was a huge piece of why Giovanni won Game 1. And I'm really curious to see how it's going to play out in this Game 3.
Fluttermane with the Focus Sash intact, moving first on this turn, really in the driver's seat. It can threaten a Moonblast into Koraidon, maybe forcing a Terastallization. Looks like James is going for that mentioned Terastallization. Gonna make that Koraidon a Fire type, so it can't just be one hit knocked out from that Fluttermane. But If that Flutter Mane decides to go for a Shadow Ball boosted by the Stellar Terra, then that's going to be a ton of damage into that Koraidon. Going to just be a Moonblast into the Incineroar, maybe expecting a defensive play from the Koraidon, and that Collision Course is going to go out. Can the Brute Bonnet survive at this HP? Nope, we saw it before doing just about that much, but a critical hit means we don't really get to know what the damage roll is. That's tough. Both players have now lost their Brute Bonnet, and things are looking a fair bit more even as James burns that first turn of sleep. If that Incineroar wakes up quickly, these players are about even in board progress now.
I think with the Collision Course getting that boost from hitting super effectively, I'm not sure if that Brute Bonnet survives without the Terastallization anyways. So that KO, even with a critical hit, I think is expected from Giovanni's side. But this means that Gio actually gets to bring in a new Pokemon here, and if it's that Chi-Yu, then Moonblast is suddenly in range to get a knockout there on the Incineroar. And remember, you have Choice Scarf as well, so Dark Pulse and a boosted Shadow Ball from Stellar Terastallization is a very real double up into this Koraidon. So Giovanni now has this position where you preserve the Sash, you've preserved the Scarf on Chi-Yu, and you've gotten rid of the Brute Bonnet. All three conditions which caused the loss in Game 2, Giovanni has been able to preserve here to set up a really great game here where you can threaten Koraidon and Incineroar for a lot of damage. And taking either of these targets is absolutely phenomenal. If you're able to get rid of the Incineroar, then Koraidon will have to take Blacky Helmet damage anymore. And of course, Shadow Rider can't swap in for the fear of its Focus Sash being broken. So it really is on James here to respond of which Pokemon he's okay with going down.
Yeah, so James worked so hard in the first two games to have everybody try to forget that this Chi-Yu could be really fast. That knockoff on the Choice Scarf every other game, but with it being preserved so well from Giovanni, these two Pokemon are now the fastest on the field very convincingly. There's no easy way for James to change that. Shadow Ball is going to fire off into that Koraidon, and we're going to have to see if that Incineroar wakes up or if it's just going to be knocked out by this Chi-Yu Heat Wave. It looks like it's going into the Protect on the Koraidon, and yeah, it does connect with the Incineroar, but the Incineroar survives. If it wakes up and knocks off, that's going to be huge, but a 2-turn sleep on the Incineroar exactly when Giovanni needed it means that these two Pokemon are likely going to faint next turn. All Chi-Yu has to do is connect those Heat Waves.
And that Heat Wave does so much damage. We saw it from before as well. Not in this game, but in the previous set as well. Just how much it does to these Koraidons. Maybe about a third of its HP. And with Beads of Ruin as well, with the Shadow Ball Stellar Terastallization, I would expect this Koraidon to go down, if not hang on with a sliver of HP. And even then, it has to go for a Flame Charge. It can't get an immediate knockout. Shadow Ball, though, coming out from Giovanni's Flutter Mane to do so much damage to this Koraidon, which James has done a great job of preserving. That's so low! Heat Wave, though, landing on both targets, getting a knockout on both of James's Pokemon. Giovanni is one step closer from becoming a world champion.
And we see why James was so scared about that Chi-Yu in Game 1 and Game 2, throwing 6 attacks into it in Game 1, getting that knockoff in Game 2. As soon as that Chi-Yu managed to get into a board state where it had no fake-out pressure, where it had that Choice Scarf up, it took a double KO on two Pokemon that resisted Heat Wave. It doesn't matter. The sun's up, the Beads of Ruins are up. So much pressure. And now, with this one poor Calyrex Shadow Rider staring down Pokemon that all completely outspeed it, things are looking pretty tough. And Giovanni's gonna do the honors by just sending that Shadow Ball out and trying to connect this Heat Wave. If so, this Chi-Yu is gonna secure the World Championship title for Giovanni.
Giovanni Shiski is going to be your Anaheim World Champion!
Absolutely incredible play from both players. You see the hug. They are so excited for having gotten to play in this stadium. And just impeccable play from Giovanni. That Chi-Yu sticking with it even though it didn't do too much in Game 1 or Game 2, trusting that as soon as it was in the right board state, it would be able to throw out so many Heat Waves. He looks so happy with his play, and he absolutely should be. He's just won the World Championships. What a season.
Yeah, and something he has been chasing his entire season. The World Champion title is now his. Something he has dreamed of his entire career. You can see him already starting to tear up. The excitement in his face, him popping off, the work he has put in is absolutely deserved. This is one of the most well-deserved world champions I've seen in a while.
You were telling me before this match about just how much blood, sweat, and tears Giovanni has been putting into improving his play this season, especially. So much, countless hours on analysis, and it really showed. We see this stellar terastallization Moonblast, getting the KO on the Brute Bonnet, catching a turn where James was trying to expect a switch or something else, not going for that sucker punch, really setting things up well. Sure, he lost the Brute Bonnet right afterwards, but it didn't matter. That Fluttermane was making so much progress, chipping things down so that this Chi-Yu was in prime position to Heat Wave, take a double KO, and then finish off that Calyrex Shadow Rider the next turn.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the best World Finals we've gotten to see. Not only was it a 3-game series, James Evans made it incredibly close and very well fought for both of them being such close friends, being able to take it. But we're going to let Aaron, we're going to take it. Sorry, I'm so emotionally distraught. I'm like almost in tears. Giovanni is one of my amazingly close friends, and to see him just take it all for the win is just absolutely astounding. And I'm about to tear up for him. He's not even on stage yet. And James as well, being such a close friend of his as well. It's just a perfect Worlds Finals.
Let's hear it for your world champion! Giovanni, I keep seeing you just going like this, shaking your head. What's going through your mind right now?
Disbelief. I mean, I prepped really hard for this tournament, and I've been following competitive Pokemon for over a decade now and competing at in-person tournaments for 7 seasons, and 6 of those in the Masters Division. I don't have any words. This is just unbelievable. I can't believe that like all the work finally paid off.
Tell us a little bit about that. Everyone here is wondering what it's like to be standing where you're standing, and we know you put in so much work. There were probably moments where you felt discouraged or like you might give up. What advice do you have for people that want to put in the kind of work that you put in?
Trust yourself. If you want to pursue something, go for it wholeheartedly.
That's great advice. Now, we want to let you get off this stage and take a few deep breaths and celebrate with your friends and family, but not before we give you a chance to say anything you'd like to say to this audience or your family or anyone at home.
Thank you to my family. Thank you to my friends. Thank you to everyone who's supported me along the way. Thank you to all the spectators here that have made this event so wonderful. And I'm very grateful to be crowned as the new world champion.
Crowned you are! Let's hear it for Giovanni! Casters, back to you.
He's so amazing, man. And to be a world champion finally is a title that not many can say. And to do it with a team as spectacular as that is fantastic. And nothing but congratulations and you know all your flowers to you. You deserve the world, and I mean you have it now. You're the world champion. You have won. You have accomplished. You've gotten the peak. You've achieved it.
So incredible. Tyson, I'm going to take your statement and raise it even further. You said this was one of the best Worlds Finals we've ever seen. I think it's the best. I thought that was spectacular. I thought that both players played so well, showcased how intricate and nuanced this matchup was. And Giovanni just kept adjusting, kept showcasing that familiarity, and really proved that he trusted himself. He went for it wholeheartedly, and he won the World Championships in an incredibly deserving best of 3.
I can't tell you how many of like our friends and stuff like that tell him all the time, like, yo, like, is Koraidon really the call for Worlds? Like, it's finally time all season to hop off of it. I mean, I said it myself. I was like, I don't even know if Koraidon's still the call anymore. But proving us wrong, that true dedication, I think that is the moral of the story, is that Gio is dedicated to VGC. And I know no one more dedicated than him to the game. And that is exemplified in his team, carrying it through multiple regulations, as they said there, and mastering it and really honing his craft to bring it to perfection here at the World Championships.
Familiarity is such a strong strategy for winning the World Championships, but it is such a high risk because if you bring a team that really just doesn't work well, you absolutely have to trust yourself. And there's so many moments, I'm sure, of doubt and difficulty getting along that journey. And so hearing that advice from Gio to trust yourself and go for things wholeheartedly is just wonderful to hear.
Yeah, and we're going to have a final review here of all of our winners here at Anaheim World Champions there. Those were your juniors, now our seniors. Kevin Hahn taking the victory 2-0 there. And were all amazing games. Again, more 2-0s here throughout the entire bracket. Kevin doing an amazing job here in the seniors division there and taking that home, aging up and taking 2 world championships there under your belt. I only expect him to see, maybe him as a next world champion, next when he does age up into masters. And that's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Kevin Hahn with an incredibly impressive showcase there. It was a wonderful match to see, but also something to just point out here for how remarkable these Masters finals were. That finals was a 2-1 finals. It was the only finals that was 2-1 in the entire tournament. It's so difficult for players who have been given a day to prepare for that to still be a very close match. And it was just so wonderfully speaking to the creativity of both of these players that there was no steamrolling. Every game was so close. And these players really brought us a real treat in a best of 3 set. That doesn't always happen on Sundays. And I'm so excited that we got to watch that.
Yeah, and I think now, yeah, like he man, I have so many words for both of these players. Even James too. Like again, I don't want to highlight just Giovanni, right? Because James also made it to this level of stage. He's also my friend. Where I think that this. They're such close friends as well that this, like they said, they went to dinner together. They maybe didn't prepare together, but they had such similar ideas, and to see both those executed at a world's level stage and again go to a 3-game set is just phenomenal to see.
Yeah, absolutely. A real celebration. Just getting to be on this stage in this historic moment meant so much to both of these players. And I think they can and should remain proud of that moment for the rest of their lives. They gave us a spectacular show. They showed us that both of them really had what it takes to be a world champion. And it was just, I don't know how to say it in any other way than it was such an incredible treat to be able to see them perform. Such a celebration of this game and all of their hard work, team building, believing in themselves, bringing the Sun archetype to the forefront.
Yeah, and I think both players, this is not the last we're going to see of them. Commitment doesn't stop at achieving your goals. It means achieving that goal and pushing past it, achieving that goal and using it as a stepping stone to achieve your next goal, achieving, another world's win, achieving, more, maybe his first regional win. I mean, he skipped the whole thing he skipped the regional stage. He got the top 8s, went right to the world champion. Who needs the regional titles? And this is not the last we're going to see from not only Gio, not only from James, but all of the Masters players that made it to the top cut here at the World Championships. Just absolute dedicated players. And as Scarlet and Violet only gets bigger, and as the next generation of Pokemon and players comes in, the player base is going to get bigger. The talent is only going to get larger, and the dedication is only going to grow deeper. And I can truly wholeheartedly say that Gio and James will be 2 of the still most dedicated players 5 years from now when they're still playing the game.
Absolutely. We're going to jump over to some award interviews here.
What a day of action and suspense and upsets. Thank you, everyone, here in person and online, for supporting Pokemon, and we hope you keep pouring energy into these competitions for years to come so that we can keep watching them grow. Now let's bring our finalists to the stage from the 2025 season. Are you ready? First, let's hear it for your video game junior finalist, Sasuke Arinori! And now, your video game junior champion, Luke Whittier! your video game senior finalist, Xian Li. Now let's hear it for your video game senior champion, Kevin Hahn. Your video game masters finalist, James Evans. And finally, your 2025 Video Game Masters Champion, Giovanni Siski. These are your finalists and champions of 2025. Raise your trophies high and let's hear it. Raise them up. This concludes our 2025 competitive season, but the show is not over yet. One of the most anticipated moments of the weekend is coming right up, and that's closing ceremonies. What will we unveil? I'm not going to tell you. You have to come to find out, so don't go anywhere. We're going to take some time to reset our stage and recap what we've seen so far this weekend. So let's go over to the casters to discuss.
And what an amazing closing ceremony we see there. And you have a demonstration of what you have won as well. A demonstration and a physical remembrance of the accomplishments that these players have achieved.
Yeah, a huge, wholehearted, sincere welcome to the 6 players who just got trophies kind of like this one and have joined the VGC Hall of Fame for some really incredible Pokemon that they showed us. It's such an honor to be able to cast and watch these things, and so inspiring to see these players working so hard for a game that we all love.
I mean, I don't know if you guys can see it, but Gio looking there at the trophy wasn't even worried about the crowd. He's been waiting forever to hold one of those in his hands, and he is going to not let his eyes off of that thing. He will be glued to that for the next month, if not year. And his hands and eyes will not leave that trophy until death do him part. And it is an amazing accomplishment, truly, for all these players as well, to be welcomed into that World Champion Hall of Fame and to be forever immortalized in the world of Pokemon.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so incredible for these players to be able to demonstrate such wonderful accomplishments. And I think really wonderful that we'll all be able to look back at historic recaps of these sorts of events and remember this really cool finals that we all got to see of just really down to the wire, exceptional, there's no other way to say it, just peak really good Pokemon.
Yeah, but they're getting set up right now for the closing ceremony, and I'm very excited to get to watch that and hopefully get some new reveals on maybe what new regulations, new games maybe. You never know. I mean, for you TCG fans out there, maybe some new megas and things like that introduced to the game. I know ZA is right around the corner, right? They might do some reveals for that. Last minute megas. Mega Dragonite was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that could be revealed. I'm so excited to see that. So we'll have to close out our stream pretty soon here, send everyone over to that main stream. But thank you so much to everyone who has watched this. It's been an absolute joy to be able to cast this with you, Tyson. And I'm really glad to all the Pokemon fans out there really enjoying the World Championships. So we'll see you next time. And thanks so much, everyone.
Yes, and thank you, Victory Road.